here for 1 second. Thank you, ma'am. Yep.
Okay.
We made it. 1 minute. No.
My whole life, I don't think there's not been something that's stupider than this. Anyway. Yep.
All right. I will now call to order special town council meeting for Wednesday, August 4th, 2021. And I would like to welcome all those who have joined us today here in the council chamber and also on live stream. This afternoon is a big day for us as we move forward with the vision of our town. And I just kind of wanted to share a quick invocation. What I want to talk about is unity. I know you guys have heard me say that over and over and over again, but it's just that important. No matter what decisions we make, we have to come together and do it as a town. Division will only take us in a wrong direction. And I want to assure you that whatever we do here today, everything's going to be okay. We're going to move forward together. So with that, I'll end the invocation. Thank you for coming out, and we'll move right into the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If you haven't already, if you plan to speak tonight or this afternoon during the comment section of the public forum, please make your way to my right. Ms. Donna is there. We're full, so we're at 12 speakers. All right, total time, 12 speakers or 36 minutes, whichever one comes first. I do want to establish some structure here today. We will do this in an orderly fashion. There will be no interruptions. The council will not respond during the comment section. So if you ask any questions, we will not respond to those. We're here to gather input so it can help us make an informed decision. Just keep that in mind. As far as hand claps, we prefer that not be done because we want to keep the order. If you think something has been said that you support, feel free to do this. But what I say is raise the roof. You can do that, all right? But let's keep it orderly. Let's get this thing done together. All right, so with that, we'll move right into the public hearing. Mr. Russell Dalton. It is a possible motion to approve schematic designs to carry forward to final design phase for the Saunders Street parking lot, Commerce Street Alley, Seaboard Street Alley, the Peak on Salem Alley, Saunders Street Gathering Place, and Salem Streetscape, as well as smart parking solutions. Thank you, Mr. Dalton.
Good evening. Tonight we are opening a public hearing to talk about our downtown design projects. This is the agenda for tonight. We're going to review the process and talk about follow-up information since we held the last council work session on this issue. We're going to go through a parking summary, talk about the possible motions for consideration. Then I will go through the schematic designs again that were reviewed at the council work session as a recap to refresh everyone's memory on that. Following that, we have a presentation on the solar canopy because there were some questions from council on the solar canopy at the work session. And then finally, we'll open it for the public hearing comments, and then following that will be council's consideration of the possible motions. So as far as the process goes, we reviewed most of this back at the work session, but phase one, the initiation of this project, we held focus group meetings and we put out a 2-minute survey. And then we went on to phase two, which was our schematic design. We held tenant and owner meetings, followed by public workshops. We held a town council work session, and then tonight is our town council special meeting where we're opening it for a public hearing. Phase 3, following this, we intend to go into final design plans, and that would be followed by property acquisition for easements and right-of-way and town property that would be required to implement some of these elements of the design. Following that would be construction documents, and then there would be estimates and bidding. So ultimately, town council would have to decide to move forward with awarding the projects at that point once they've been bid. This is a new slide since the work session. This is a proposed schedule by staff based on our understanding of where the CIP was and what we have seen throughout the design process. So we have proposed all these projects for design and right-of-way design in 2021-22. For the Saunders lot in particular, we've also proposed right-of-way acquisition or property acquisition during the same year, 21-22, to be able to construct in 22-23 as a priority. Next down from that, Seaboard and Commerce and Peak Alley, again showing design this fiscal year. Right-of-way would actually be 22-23 because there's certainly more complexities with right-of-way there. And also construction would be phased later than the Saunders lot. So we're showing construction in 23-24. Then following that, Salem Streetscape and Saunders Corner, again, design this fiscal year. Right-of-way would be in 22-23, corresponding with right-of-way acquisition for Seaboard, Commerce, and Peak Alley. Some of those owners would be involved with right-of-way on both the front and back side of the building for easements and other things that are needed, so it makes sense to work with those owners at one time. Based on this schedule, there would be a gap year while Seaboard and Commerce and Peak Alley are under construction, and then we would plan for construction in 24-25 for the Salem Streetscape. We held a drop-in for owners and tenants at the depot on July 26th. This was an opportunity following the council work session for them to come in, ask us any questions, and provide us any information. We did have 8 or 9 people show up to that meeting, and we talked about the project and had some good follow-up input. Again, I want to reiterate construction will be phased with the parking lot expansion first. That is our intent to gain our goal of at least 151 net new public spaces for that parking lot. That is our design that includes keeping the green space that we discussed before at the work session. And I also want to say staff recommendations consider both those general public comments that went out through the survey plus the one-on-one and the individual business owner and tenant conversations. So we did hear a lot from them, so we're not just considering the general comments that came in as part of that survey. It is important to note property acquisition is required to expand and improve public infrastructure. That property acquisition comes after that final design. So, we have to know what we need before we can approach those owners. During the final design process, we develop exhibits showing exactly what easements and right-of-way and town property is needed. Then we were able to do appraisals and approach those property owners with that acquisition in hand. Utility service relocations underground that we've proposed in the alleys will require owner and tenant participation for the building connections. The projects we're doing can prepare for those connections, but there would have to be something later to facilitate that. If there's a program to assist with those connections with those private owners, there could be something there. But our project is intended to be able to set that up so it can be done later, not to actually do that. And also we showed a lot of artwork in our schematics, and we got some strong opinions one way or the other about that. We do want to stress that it is conceptual. We wanted to illustrate some artwork, but we expect that would be something that would be considered later by the Public Art Committee in a separate effort. We weren't trying to dictate what kind of artwork is going to be used in the downtown plan. So next step after this is final design. And as I noted, bidding and construction would occur in later phases, as we've mentioned. To make sure everybody understands, the projects that are not already funded for construction this fiscal year would be subject to reprioritization in our annual CIP process. So those projects would be shown back again with the new funding numbers that may have changed since the previous time for that discussion. This is a detailed slide on the parking summary, so I won't get into too much with this. We can always go back to it later if we need to. But we did get a lot of comments about, in particular, like the alley areas, places where we might be taking away parking. Maybe there are areas where people can park now, but we are actually changing those areas up. So we wanted to be fair in determining, where are we taking away parking, where are we adding it back to get a good number on net new spaces. Based on the town lots, the marked on-street spaces, and the alley upgrades, in total, we're showing a net increase of 201 non-handicap accessible spaces and an increase in 13 handicap spaces with all of our plans. At the bottom, I've highlighted a proposed lease with the Apex Baptist Church that is being discussed to see if we can move forward with that. The church has allowed public parking on their lots in the past, but they are not signed officially as a public lot. We don't have a lease with the church. If we are able to establish a lease for some of their parking areas, we would be able to sign those as public parking with certain restrictions that would be determined by the lease. So we're continuing with that to try and get that to be formalized as a signed public lot, but that is still in discussion. Again, really quickly, these are the possible motions, and I will go into the schematic designs again after this. But as far as the Saunders lot, staff, the design team recommended the preserve green option, which preserves the large oak tree there that fronts Saunders Street. There is a solar canopy that we looked at. We recommended excluding that from the project. However, there is a separate presentation tonight that will discuss the solar canopy because there were questions from council. We, as the design team, made that recommendation based on the information we had, looking at the cost of that within the scope of the downtown plan and what our priorities were, what our goals were. If there is if the information presented tonight to council makes sense as a larger goal for the town as a whole for this area, then that's something to take into consideration that would have been outside the scope of what we were looking at. So I don't want it to look like that staff is contradicting one group versus the other in terms of our recommendation. Commerce Street, we recommended proceeding with that. Also recommended including the utility relocation underground, making sure the conduits are there for that. Seaboard Street, we recommended proceeding with that design and relocating utilities, providing those conduit. We recommended a lease for compactors on Seaboard Street, but we would have, to be clear, we'd have compactors either way. We're just recommending exploring a lease option versus purchase. For the Peak on Salem Alley, we recommend proceeding with that design. For the Salem Streetscape, we recommend proceeding with what we call the parking option, that is keeping 10 parking spaces out of the total that are 30 out there now. We also recommend proceeding with the option that keeps a vertical curb. There was an option looked at curbless design, so that was one of our options, but we decided not to recommend that. We recommended a lease of what are called smart trash cans. Certainly council can decide whether or not to implement the smart trash cans and whether or not a purchase or lease makes sense, or that may be up to further debate. We recommended including an upgrade of the Chatham Street traffic signal for decorative poles. So we would explore that if council decides that's the best thing to do there. We recommended including pavers on Salem Street instead of asphalt lanes. So that was a design option we'll discuss tonight. We recommended including lighting control along Salem Street, and we can discuss more about that. We recommended proceeding with the Saunders Street gathering space. That's the lot the town owns at the corner of Salem Street at Saunders Street that in the long-term plan shows a building there, but in the meantime we propose to do a pedestrian area with some accessible parking. As far as the smart parking goes, we recommended proceeding with that, including both the Saunders lot and the Seaboard Railroad strip of parking, but not including on-street spaces and not including Baptist Church lease if that moves forward in terms of the smart parking discussion. So I'll go through the schematic designs really quickly. This is the list. First of all, we have two options for the Saunders lot, as you may remember. We showed you an option with a net new 178 spaces, and then that would be compared to an option that, as I've highlighted here, keeps the green space, the large oak tree. That would be 27 less net new spaces than in option A. At the council work session, I believe there was a motion that may have been approved for the option with the green space, and that's fine if that's how you'd want to proceed. If you want to discuss that again tonight, we can discuss that again tonight after the public hearing. As far as the recommendations go, the preserve green option is slightly cheaper than the maximized parking option. We are currently talking with property owners. There are two lots that are included in that parking expansion, so that's why we say cost to be determined, since that's under negotiation at this time. The solar canopy has gone up in cost since the last quote we got. Steel has jumped up in price over the past month or so. So there's a new number on that. Steel could certainly go back down. You know, there's a lot of factors in construction until you bid a project that can drive a project cost up or down. And there will be a presentation later to explain the return on that investment and other benefits of that solar canopy. The original CIP allocation, just to recap, was $1.2 million for the parking expansion. This is the Commerce Street schematic design, and I've highlighted here that row of parking that would be built with this design. So there is a net gain of 2 standard and 2 accessible spaces. That's comparing it to the existing today, where you can park cars, but those aren't actually paved line spaces today like you would see here. This also includes improvement of the pavement on Commerce Street and some drainage improvements as well. So it would require acquisition of right-of-way across the back of those businesses to be able to do those improvements on Commerce Street, and also acquisition for this improvement for parking and pedestrian hardscape in the area. We do recommend moving forward with this. Construction is shown at $178,000. We estimate right-of-way and easements would be around $130,000. We also recommend relocating dry utilities as an option, which was $128,000. And in this and the other alley projects moving after this slide, those do total a little over $1.8 million, and we did only have $500,000 allocated for alleyways, so it is well above that original budget we anticipated, just to keep in mind. And this is Seaboard Street, so I've highlighted several areas here. One is what I'm calling Seaboard Central and the Loop. This design establishes a pickup drop-off loop and has parking spaces coming off of that, and also spaces along Seaboard Street. The loop was an interesting idea, which we hadn't thought about before, that our consultant came up with. If you're familiar with delivery activity, this would be really nice for trucks to be able to pull into that loop and even park along that side of the loop and still allow a vehicle to get around them and get in and out of those parking spaces while they load and unload. So it's a nice amenity for the area as a whole. There is a net loss of 7 parking spaces based on this design, much more organized, and you have the loop, but we just did want to point that out, that we are losing spaces based on where people can park. Those aren't paved line spaces today, but we did an assessment based on how many spaces we think are available just for that available area of the gravel parking and everything else that's out there. We show at Elk Local Foods paving spaces along that side. There's a net gain of 1 standard and 1 accessible space with that. And for our CSX lease area, we think we can expand that toward Chatham Street and gain 5 standard and 1 accessible space there. We do recommend moving forward with it, but it's one of the more expensive projects as far as alleys are concerned. $743,000. There's also $202,000 in right-of-way and easements. If you decide to relocate dry utilities, we do recommend that at $192,000. That helps get those utilities underground and clean up that overhead space. We'd have to work with business owners later as well. There is a compactor purchase option, which is about $70,000. We would recommend exploring a lease option with that, which has some benefits in terms of warranty and repairs and things with operating the compactors versus a capital project purchase. But again, that grand total, just under $1.8 million, this is part of that total. This is the Peak Alley that's shown as a pedestrian-oriented area. We would close off access to Salem Street to the Peak Alley. Currently, it is temporarily closed off by a business owner there to allow for outdoor dining. So this, follows up on that vision to formalize that area. There are 2 accessible spaces at the back side on the Seaboard side from this, which are just off the image. But you can see a small stage set up and areas for people to dine, and that would be the intent of this area. There is a net loss of 13 standard type spaces, but a net gain of 2 accessible spaces in that area. So that's the trade-off with this design. Construction for Peak on Salem, $91,000, about $44,000 in right-of-way and easements for that area. So again, that contributes to that grand total for the alleyways. Now on to Salem Street. There were 2 options that showed drop zones. This is one of those options, option A. So there's one pickup drop-off space on each side of the street down toward the Saunders Street end. You'll see in the image there are some crisscrossing lines. Those are the aerial, the catenary lights going across the street. You see images of street trees that are mirror each other on each side of the street going down through there. There are street furniture and street lights as well. This is the vertical curb option. We also looked at an option that kept more of the parking spaces. So instead of just the one pickup drop-off zone on each side of the street, this retains 10 out of the 30 spaces. We were able to retain the catenary lighting with some adjustments, adjust the street furniture layout. We lose 3 of the street trees with this, but we did make sure to include at least one street tree on the side of the street in each case. So there's no area where there's a gap in street trees. You've either got on both sides of the street or one side of the street with this parking arrangement. We didn't feel like we could add back any more parking without taking away from the goals of the streetscape, but we feel like this is a good balance to keeping some of the parking. And this option to keep more parking came out of the early discussions prior to releasing it to the public with the downtown business owners and tenants, because there was a big concern, particularly from retail, about having parking up front. I did follow up with a conversation with Liz Parham from the NC Main Street. She's the NC Main Street and Rural Planning Director. And we talked for a while, and she did stress the importance of having parking immediate to retail businesses, but did acknowledge there's no specific formula to know that are 10 spaces enough or not, but it is important, she thinks, to at least attempt to strike a balance to provide some parking there for retail. So we did try to do that, and this is our recommendation to try and keep the 10 spaces. But one caveat, this is a curbless. We would recommend a hybrid option where you retain the 10 parking spaces but do actually a curbed design rather than the curbless. And this is option C, which includes, again, pickup drop-off space, but it's the curbless option with a pickup drop-off space. So a lot of information on this slide, but out of the options, our option that we recommend is the option B, but an alternative option B, which would be vertical curb with the 10 parking spaces. That would be somewhere around the cost estimate of the vertical curb with drop zones, but a little bit more because of the spaces. So it would be less than the 1.9 million, but more than the 1.47 million. Right-of-way and easements would just be, for the most part, construction easements across the front of the businesses because we already have right-of-way out there on Salem Street. We do recommend smart trash cans. We looked at purchase versus lease options, so that would add about $59,000 if we bought them versus a 5-year agreement for adding about $120,000 on top of our decorative cans that would help us in terms of like operation and maintenance with having a contractor doing a lot of that. Again, Chatham Street signal upgrade adds $200,000. We recommend the pavers. That's good for both stormwater and aesthetics and has some kind of calming effect on traffic. So we would not recommend asphalt lanes. We would recommend the pavers and recommend the lighting, color, and control I talked about. So the original CIP allocation was $2.5 million. So we're doing a little bit better on our estimate here than we were on the alleys. This is the Saunders Street gathering space that we recommend. So this is showing taking that existing row of parking there and the garden and trees that are there now, converting that to pedestrian hardscape, taking away most of that parking but having 2 accessible spaces. So that is a net loss of 5 standard spaces, but it's a gain of 1 extra additional accessible space. So construction of the Saunders gathering area, that would be $202,000. We don't anticipate significant cost in right-of-way easements with that since it's town property. And there wasn't a separate CIP allocation identified, so we would propose this to be an add-on to the Salem Streetscape. It could be constructed with Commerce Street, or it could come in with Seaboard Street. We'd have to figure out for construction phasing purposes and budget purposes like where that fits. Now onto smart parking. We do recommend smart parking for the Saunders and Seaboard with railroad side only. Smart parking is basically like monitoring systems that cameras, loops. You can have a sign up that tells you how many spaces are available. You can have the information pushed out to the cloud, to go to an app, to tell people when they're coming to downtown how many spaces are available. We don't think that makes sense for on-street spaces, but we do think it makes sense for off-street spaces if council decides to move forward with that. So at this point, before we go into public comments, I want to turn it over to sustainability staff, and they're going to talk about our solar canopy, and I will bring up that presentation. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. So, as you know, we're looking into the solar lot, solar canopy project. And so for some context, the solar canopy project is just overall for the sustainability team a town-wide initiative. We recognize that we have our 100% clean energy goal for town operations. And so we're looking to maximize our solar potential wherever possible, one of those projects being this Saunders lot. So that being said, we think this is a great opportunity to start with because when it comes to things like anything electric or anything solar, it's a lot more expensive to retrofit. So I think seeing the opportunity to just start from the ground up with the solar canopy here is great because then if we wanted to pursue a solar canopy project down the road, it would be more expensive to retrofit. So there's that context as well. Sorry, my glasses keep falling off too. So like I said, it's a townwide initiative, and the Saunders lot is a good opportunity to, lead the way. And it would be great because the public would benefit from it because it provides shaded parking. It would help reduce the heat island effect since, it's creating shade. And this is one of the proposals that we've gotten. So where we're starting with like the cost estimates. It would be a project that produces about 814,000 kilowatt hours per year, and that would be with 588 solar panels. This is how we would maximize the benefit. It's a bit of a larger project because it is upwards of 500 panels, but we maximize the benefit that way because the larger the project, the less expensive, similar to like buying in bulk, if that makes sense. With the scope of the work that we would be getting with this, the vendor would be covering the cost of the carport structure, the solar panel modules, the inverters, the optimizers, and the shade study, all of which I can explain further as needed. And the Apex electric team specifically would be responsible for the transformers, the interconnections to the distribution system, the site preparation, and the potential future EV charging stations. Because with this solar canopy, we have the opportunity down the road to add the EV charging stations as well as a solar battery. That's not included in the cost here, but it is something that could be added down the road if needed, depending on what the town is asking for and what if the town sees that as necessary. But that is another exciting opportunity because more EV chargers also, is just another project that would help us reach the clean energy goal. These are more details on the cost estimation. Like was stated earlier, the estimate before was about $760,000. Now it's about $910,000, simply because there's a lot of fluctuation with the steel prices right now. And then this price also doesn't include the percent of contingency that is often included in projects. There's also, with this cost, a warranty with virtually all aspects of the project, including the steel structure itself, which has a warranty of 10 years, the solar panels, which would have a warranty of 25 years, and the inverter, which would have a warranty of about 10 to 12 years. That's not saying that they need to be replaced in those times by any means, although solar panels do have a lifeline of about 25 years. But if something were to happen with them because of weather or just events like that, then we would have a warranty on that. Given the project and what kind of solar capacity we would be getting from it, we would have a total annual savings of about $50,000 with our energy costs. Again, to people who aren't involved with solar, this is a bit overwhelming. It was to me at first, so I can explain that further as needed as well. But the big takeaway from this slide is that our total annual savings would be about $50,000 with this project. That makes the total payback about 19 years, since the project is about $930,000. And that was calculated just given the 588 solar panels, peak demand, the price of our electric rates and things like that as well. So, in summary, the estimated cost is approximately $910,000 with savings of $50,000 every year on our electric, and the return on investment is about 19 years. Some pros and cons. It is an added cost to the downtown design project, and it is there is the potential future use of another parking lot space like down the road, because this is a 25-year investment. But the pros include shade for parking and events. There's the possibility of adding an EV charging station. There's the opportunity for interesting streetscape or public art. And it's also an educational and outreach opportunity. Educational because people will see it and probably wonder, what is the solar canopy and what is the purpose? And it can just inform on the initiatives and the clean energy goals that we have. There is the return on the investment, free sourcing for EV charging, and for the environmental benefits. You know, it's clean energy, it's supporting clean transportation, and it's reducing the heat island effect. So once again, just tying it back to the clean energy goal. This is a bar chart just kind of visualizing the annual carbon offset from the system. And more information, just if about 1% of our energy resource is clean energy, then adding this proposed solar canopy is another 1% of not clean energy that we will be using. And that is the same impact as planting 5,561 trees in Apex every year, if that's a better number to wrap your head around. Additional considerations include funding for this. Megan and I, the sustainability program, would definitely look into other opportunities for funding, like grant resources. That would also be applied for research for EV charging infrastructure, and batteries for solar storage is optional and may be added in the future. The summary, which I've gone over, I don't know if anyone has any not questions, I guess, but in summary, that's the cost. Again, important to consider the steel price fluctuations and the grant opportunities that we're considering here. The estimated annual savings, which is, a 19-year return on investment. The future add-ons, the educational opportunities, and overall, the Apex Sustainability team recommends that we approve the solar canopy project because it's a big step to help meet the 100% clean energy goal. It's meeting the increasing demand for public EV infrastructure. It's providing shade and cooler temperatures, which, like I mentioned, is just reducing the heat island effect. It's promoting awareness to our Apex community about our sustainability initiatives. It's helping us be a leader in our regional community, and the return on investment occurs before the life of the structure. So for about 6 years, towards the end of the 25-year lifespan of the panels, we would be making money on said project. That is it.
All right. Any questions for our sustainability analyst?
Yeah, thanks. For that payback period of 19 years, I know you mentioned a shade study in the presentation. I'm assuming that 19 years means no shade in the assumption. Is that correct?
That is correct. The number that we got based on the 50,000 of how much we were saving, that is assuming that we will be getting at least 8 months of the peak demand. So it's sorry, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, and I'm about is within the project cost, there will be doing the shade survey as well. So I know some trees may come down for that project, but it is based on, minimal shading.
It just seemed uncommon. It seemed like the picture showed no trees anywhere, and I think our plan showed trees across the parking lot as much as possible. Just as a comment.
I have a question. What do you think the likelihood is that we could get some grant funding to assist with the cost? Any ideas about that?
That is something that we would definitely have to do more research on. I've looked into it myself. I know that with the grant funding, I found a lot with the EV charging. With the solar canopies, though, it's still there's still a lot of opportunity that would have to explore for that. So I can't give you a certain answer for that. I don't have any grants off the top of my head right now, but we are looking into it. On a daily basis, looking into the grants for opportunities like this.
I have a question. So the photo you showed us, the placement of the panels isn't set in stone, right? That was just kind of one possible location was above. It looked like the gravel lot currently. Right there.
Here?
Yeah.
That is my understanding is that my understanding is that that's essentially the amount of land that would be looking for the 588 panels.
So to your comment earlier, Councilmember, it's a mix, right? Obviously, we're not going to put solar panels underneath the tree.
Right.
So this would be in this area of the parking lot. Instead of having trees in the middle, we'd have the shade. There's still trees in the rest of the lot.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
I think one other question I have, and this is going to be broader for staff. I know we got cost estimates of parking decks, and we're talking, I think I read between $5.7 and $9.4 million potentially for parking deck construction. Is there any long-range possibilities of a parking deck in this 20-year, 25-year span in that space? And I would that you may not can comment on that, but that's a question I would have for maybe somebody with staff to answer if they could.
Yeah, that is something we talked about earlier today, and that is a concern. My understanding is a structure like this, you could take it apart potentially and reuse some portion, if not all of it, somewhere else. But yeah, we don't know exactly where the parking deck would go, if this would impact that design or not. But there's certainly, we don't currently have any funding identified in the CIP outlook. Maybe in 15 or 20 years, there may be a need shown for a parking deck at that time and funding identified. But at that point, it's definitely going to be more like the $10 million plus cost estimate, as time passes, because that's a pretty substantial structure, and it's going to take up quite a bit of land to get it built as well.
But you're basically saying if in 10 or 15 years a parking deck is in the picture for the town, the panels could possibly be disassembled and used elsewhere? Is that what I'm hearing?
That would be our hope, that we could disassemble at least, and reuse as much as possible somewhere else. There's obviously concrete foundations that they would be attached to, but the information we got is that it is, it's a structure, so it is assembled in a certain way. So the idea is you can potentially disassemble it. It's a question of, the cost of disassembling it and then where are you moving it to and the cost of that.
Okay, thank you.
And I would hope that a parking deck's further out than 10 or 15 years if we're going to spend all this money right now to do this parking lot. If it's only 10 years out, let's do a deck right now, right?
Well, that's just my question. It's important to be, cognizant of long-range planning, because I think that's what we're all trying to do.
Yeah. And I had one other question. Part of the discussion last time concerned getting multiple bids from different vendors. Unless we still have one bid here, are there not multiple vendors that provide this, and we're stuck with these guys, or what's the situation there?
There are multiple vendors. We would need to, before I think moving fully with the project, we'd have to send out an RFP anyway. Okay. The prices based on this are just from one vendor, and then also from the conversations we've had with our electricity's representative, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I guess if I could paraphrase what you're saying is we'll do an RFP. There will of course be multiple vendors and bids at the time.
Yes.
But we feel like this one bid is kind of representative of what we're going to see because of steel prices or.
Correct. Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And when speaking with vendors, a lot of them are not super willing to give out full prices on what they think a project would be, just because it's of the competition there. So these are the best numbers we could get based on what we were able to, what someone was willing to provide.
There was also conversation last time about where the power from this would go. Has there been more discussions with staff on that?
Yes. So if there are future EV chargers, then the solar canopy would be providing the energy for those. Otherwise, though, it would go back to the grid, the town electric grid. If that answers your question.
All right, any other questions for Ms. Mira?
I do want to circle back about the parking deck, and I appreciate, Mr. Mahaffey, your point. But, you know, if we're going to potentially invest in a solar canopy that would, you know, with about a 25-year lifespan, I would like to hear from staff. If we're thinking potentially about a parking deck, do you all have any predictions on times, the timing of when that need might arise with our predicted growth?
No, we do not have a projection. The downtown plan recommended that we continue to complete inventories over time and make sure that we are planning for the future possibility of a deck. But we also, excuse me, don't know certainly whether this would be the best location for a deck. It was just one possibility.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys.
So if you have any questions for me now, I can answer those questions, or if you want to wait until after the public hearing, I can answer questions then.
I have one.
Yeah.
So your recommendation is for option B with curb. Can you explain why you would recommend the curb versus the curbless?
A number of reasons. One is that based on the public feedback, there was a lot of sentiment about the safety of curb, or at least the feeling of safety when people are walking on the sidewalk, having that hard barrier between them and the parking and them and the travelway. We did hear some comments about you know, curb for place when there are parades and things like that, for people to sit along the curb during those events. And certainly having that hard barrier too concerns with people with children, having that basically the street flow into the sidewalk. And we would have bollards to provide protection from the vehicles. So we think we could address that protection from vehicles in that way, but there's really no way to protect, you know, people in terms of the visibility of a hard, you know, vertical curb. There would be a drain inlet that runs the length of the street, but it would be relatively flush. So it would feel more like a pedestrian-oriented streetscape throughout. However, vehicles would be able to drive on that. So, you know, we feel like, and also volumes of traffic out there, typically, you know, engineering practice, you would tend to recommend vertical curb for a street like this that still serves as a primary route. There's still going to be the same volume of traffic driving on this before and after the streetscape, if not more. So, you know, again, you know, for traffic safety, that curb provides that barrier from the volume that's out there today. Also with the curb, we can do away with a lot of the bollards, so that not just cost savings, but the bollards themselves, you know, maybe not everybody likes the look of the bollards, so you can still have the street furniture and the street trees and things like that and get rid of those.
Thank you.
I love ballers, by the way, so I just like that comment. But there's a great Twitter thing to follow, the World Baller Association. I'd recommend it highly. With the, can you confirm with the Salem Street, the Saunders parking lot? It looks to me like there's sidewalks on the side of the road where the parking lot is. And when I was out there at Pigfest for hours last weekend, some of those trees. Oh yeah, can you confirm that the trees next to the sidewalk, or the possible sidewalk there, are going to be retained? Because to me, there's a pine and a hardwood that look right next to the road right now, and there's no sidewalk there. And in this plan, it looks like there's a sidewalk.
You're saying there's a gap at that point in the sidewalk?
There's a gap in the sidewalk, and there's trees right on the edge right now, a couple of them.
We haven't gotten full final design plans. We've not, it's my understanding we would try to retain those trees. However, when we get into final design plans and look at the grading and the impacts, it's possible we could lose those smaller trees that are up against the street if we have to complete that sidewalk gap. Yeah, we just don't have that information yet.
But there is a sidewalk contemplated for this plan, that the part that's shown there on the, as the white.
The intent would be contiguous sidewalk along the frontage, that's correct.
Okay, thanks.
And I have a follow-up question as well. With the 10 spaces proposed as an option, would there still be drop zones if you did if we decided on the 10 spaces?
Yep, so the option with the pickup drop-off, the drop zones, one on each side of the street, the reason we specified those as pickup drop-off zones is because there are only 2 out there, and that seems to be the best use. If you're only going to retain 2 spaces, you really need to utilize those for the best use, which is very short-term, making sure they're able to turn over and people aren't dwelling in them for a long time. If you have the 10 spaces, we've talked about the option of having 1 of those on each side of the street be a pickup drop-off zone. So out of the 4 spaces on the west side, the one toward the Chatham Street end could be the pickup drop-off zone, and on the 6 spaces on the east side of the street, it could be that the space closest to Saunders Street could be the pickup drop-off space on that side of the street. There are more spaces, so we have some more more flexibility with how we use those. The other spaces could be 45-minute spaces or something to encourage that turnover. That was one of the comments and one of the things we looked at as well, is because right now, right there's 3-hour spaces. So somebody could come out there and their car could sit all day long. So particularly for retail, you want to be able to turn those spaces over more quickly, so they serve those retail customers better. So if we if we get into that discussion at some point, we're going to have to talk about the ordinances and the enforcement of that, because currently Apex doesn't have a designated parking authority that's out there routinely monitoring 30-minute or 1 hour or whatever it is. So technology can help with that, but certainly that's going to be a discussion with police and administration as well in terms of how we enforce that.
And also with a follow-up with option B, would any of those spots be handicap accessible? Is there thoughts about that?
They would not. My understanding with accessibility requirements is that you need the additional depth. So if you do that, then all of a sudden you basically we don't have depth out there today, and we're not going to have depth out there tomorrow. It is what it is. We're unable to provide handicap accessible spaces on street just because of the limited depth on the sidewalk itself.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. The first one is related to the contract with the church, potential contract with the church, and I assume that it's going well, but do you have a potential timeline for those discussions to end in a contract?
We do not. We've received some updated information, and I think over the next month or so, we'll learn more based on what we've heard.
Okay. My next one is related to smart parking. So it seems like the people who are the most techie will sort of have the most information related to parking availability. So, but with that, let's say that it shows that there are no more spaces, just related to the ones that it shows on the phone. Then what do we expect people to do when we want people to engage? So that's what's next then, if they don't see that there's any parking available, but there actually is.
Okay. Well, I guess, see if I understand correctly. So as far as the phone app, that would be one way to communicate that information. We would also recommend a display at the entrances to those areas that would say how many spaces are available if we're doing that. So people driving up would be able to see that information. So Seaboard is a little bit trickier because Seaboard is obviously, it's an alley, it's a street. It's not a closed off parking lot where basically anybody coming in and out is for the parking lot. So we'd have cameras there, but we think we could organize a kiosk that would provide that information that would say, on that side of the street, parking availability. And certainly there's on-street spaces available around town, and there is with or without the lease, there is the Baptist church is typically available for overflow parking for those who know about that area.
Thank you.
I have.
Oh, yep, sure.
So if you see me on my phone, I'm not being rude. I'm texting with our consultant to get additional information. And she did want to confirm that those smaller trees closest to the sidewalk for the Saunders lot most likely would need to be removed, even with the preserve green option, those smaller trees. So, thanks.
I was reading the comments, and I so appreciate staff. You all have compiled so much information. I think there are about 53 pages of comments from people, and I read through those, and several people had asked about a crosswalk in the middle you know, of downtown. Was that explored at all?
In the middle of the block?
Yeah, sort of in the middle of the block.
We did not look at that. It's a fairly short block, so the concern would be if you put something in the middle, you in some ways you disrupt the streetscape, the elements on the side of the street, but you also start to encourage more mid-block crossings, so people see that, and it sort of encourages people to sort of cross wherever. If you can guide people to those designated spots on the end at the intersections, it tends to be a little bit safer and encourage and discourage that type of activity where people are just crisscrossing the street wherever.
I was just thinking about people with mobility needs, you know, that's the biggest place that's coming from.
Yeah, I mean, the intersections, again, I mean, you're providing a rapid flash beacon on one end, and you're providing a traffic signal with push buttons on the other, and for engineering purposes, those are considered the safest crossings. Having another one mid-block, I think, would be somewhat redundant, but I understand your comment.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Mr. Dalton, Ms. Cox, and Ms. Mary, thank you so much for your work on this. Well done. Thank you. All right, we'll move now to open up public hearing for comments. And I do want to remind you, 3 minutes. When you present your comments, there's a series of lights there, green, yellow, and red. So at yellow, please start coming for a landing. If you're not done, I'm going to politely interrupt you and tell you your time is done. Also, I do want to remind you, we do have a requirement for masks in the building. So if you don't have a mask, kindly walk outside, and there are masks on the podium to Deputy Chief Mitch McKinney's left, if you walk out to the left. Thank you. All right, first speaker. We'll open up public hearing. First speaker is Ms. Shannon Flaherty, Apex Chamber of Commerce.
Hello. How are y'all doing? It feels like forever since I've seen you. My name is Shannon Flaherty. I'm the president of the Apex Chamber. Thank you for having me tonight. I just wanted to say a few things on behalf of my board of directors. I'm going to probably read most of it, but on behalf of the Apex Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, I want to publicly show our support of the downtown plan and parking study. I personally had the privilege of serving on the initial steering committee with Santec Urban Places. The process was thorough as well as enlightening. The ideas that came out of this project were diverse and created a lot of excitement amongst the committee. As you know, the study also engaged the community as a whole during multiple open sessions, which netted even more feedback. From a business perspective for our town, enhancing and extending Salem Street is positive for our business community. Over time, we anticipate more opportunities for new businesses to come to downtown Apex, which is exciting for our business community as well as the community as a whole. Definitely a concern of many is the parking, as I'm sure you've heard. This is totally understandable, and as Russell pointed out previously, the study did find a net gain, or the goal of 200 parking spaces within a 5-minute walk, and 100 spaces within a 3-minute walk. We do believe, as a board, that it is important to have those drop-off pickup spots along the way for folks who might be running in real quick to, pick up a framed from the gallery, or picking up a pizza or something like that. Quick stops, maybe running into a shop for a birthday gift. And of course, plenty of close access to handicap parking we feel is ideal for the businesses. One of the things we've really talked about is, change is inevitable, especially in a town that is growing as fast as Apex is. Having larger sidewalks can accommodate more people, thus attracting more folks from within and outside of Apex to come visit our beautiful downtown. Change requires us all to pivot a little bit. Sometimes it's a bit uncomfortable, but can be exciting to see what is to come. With change comes a positive opportunity for growth in more ways than one. The Board of Directors of the Apex Chamber of Commerce applauds the work and diligence of the council, town staff, Stantec, and the many volunteers that have done a wonderful job to get this exciting project where we are today, and we are here today to extend our full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flaherty. Next up, Ms. Linda Land.
Hello, I'm Linda Land, owner of Stylish Living. My husband and I met individually with you in May and have also spoken with the planning department members and Stantec consultants. We expressed our opposition to the portion of the plan that eliminates on-street parking between Chatham and Saunders, as well as changing the areas between Seaboard Street and the businesses from a business operation space to a public gathering space. I've come to view this as a court case with the town council members as the jury. You will make the determination of which viewpoint holds the best evidence. The planning department has presented their case. There was community outreach which produced 135 people at the first open house and 143 people at the final presentation. I would guess many of the same people attended both meetings. There were 1768 responses to online surveys. We know nothing about the respondents or if the technology blocked duplicates. Other selective surveys were done. People who chose to sit in the experimental parklet were surveyed about the parklet. People who were patronizing a brewery were asked about downtown, and they said it needed a brewery. There were no surveys done of customers walking to their cars, and I'm guessing there were no surveys done of people in the carpool lanes at local schools to get the viewpoint of busy parents. The planning department is making a recommendation to keep 10 out of 30 spaces at most and to proceed with the Seaboard and Commerce Street projects. Regardless of their recommendation, they will keep their jobs. In opposition, the opposition, being several retailers and business owners in the affected area, have presented their case. The town has a population of about 70,000. Even if the meeting attendance and online survey respondents were different people, that's just 0.029% of the population. We asked for someone to give us one example of a place similar to Apex where this has been done, and it is a success. Nobody has been able to provide one, not even Stantec, who has offices in 41 U.S. states. There are an average of 34 days per year with temperatures over 90 degrees and 90 days per year with high temperatures under 60 degrees. That's an average of 124 days that are not conducive to eating outside based on the temperature alone. There are 107 rainy days on average per year. It's dark at dinner time from November to March. Not all restaurants in the affected area serve both lunch and dinner, and not all are open 7 days a week. We are open every day, or 64 hours total per week. We provided evidence of what happened to many places when parking was removed from storefronts. We provided evidence that parked cars are a traffic calming factor and a safety factor between people on the sidewalk and moving through traffic. We've asked our customers, and they do not understand why parking would be removed. If parking is removed, there's a good possibility, based on factual information, that our business will suffer, if not close. Town Council, please don't experiment with our businesses and our charming, authentic, and vibrant downtown in order to accommodate the wishes of 0.029%.
Ms. Renee Lloyd.
Hi there, I'm Renee Lloyd, one of the owners of NB Salon Color Bar, and we're in the same building as Common Ground, so we back up. That my concern is, how much is the parking going to be disrupted while all this goes on? I can tell you, when my business closes at 6 o'clock on a Friday, we're open till 8, Tuesday through Thursday, and people are circling, waiting to go to the restaurants right now because there's no place to park. On Saturday mornings, we have clients calling since the farmers market has been moved. I'm running late for my appointment because there's no place to park right now. Has a census ever been done of how many people are employed, not counting the visitors, the guests that are going to come? And then the new building going up, the demo people weren't taking the parking that's there. The construction people right now are taking the parking every morning, and the crew is going to get larger and larger and larger as that new building goes up. And I think they need to be located elsewhere to leave the existing parking there for the businesses. We've been there 13 years, and a high-end hair salon or any hair salon needs parking. There are 6 restaurants. How many employees does it take to run a restaurant? How many people, go to those tables? It isn't just one car table. It might be 2 or 3 or 4 cars a table. So parking is necessary, and all of this looks lovely. I am very concerned about the disruption to the existing parking now while new things are being built, and that my business will be destroyed, because someone isn't going to walk 5 minutes through 100-degree weather or through the rain or whatever after they've just spent $250, getting a set of highlights and a haircut in their hair. We have plenty of handicap clients. Right now, there's only 2 handicap places back there. So that's my concern. Whereas all this looks good, no one's explained to me what's going to happen while all the construction's going on. Is it going to interrupt my ability to do business? Because, like I said, there's 6 restaurants, there are 3 barbershops, there's our salon, and then all the other businesses. And I've asked for years for a census, through the chamber. I gave up years ago because I don't think y'all realize how much pressure's on the parking already, and you can say, oh, we're picking up net X blocks away. That's fine for a festival. You talked about people, with mobility issues. All of that has to be concerned, and it's a symbiotic relationship between the businesses. My clients, they'll go to one of the little boutiques. Okay, thank you.
All right. Nick Bryant.
Sorry.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. I'm a little bit less organized in my notes, but I'll get through them as quickly as I can. Nick Bryant, the owner of Apex Gallery, of course, with my wife Bethany, who's a member of committees here in town as well. As you can tell, we're a very passionate group. Many of us have closed our businesses early so we can be here and express our concerns and to you guys moving forward. I'd like to talk about some of the things I'm for. I'm for moving forward. I like the plan. I participated as a member of that committee. I'm for the staggered parking. I don't want to see it go to no parking. I'm for moving forward with builder buy-in, with building owner buy-in. I think a lot of them, some of them have been not contacted fully and been forced to engage in this. Of course, we have very active building owners, and then we don't. What I'm against is moving forward with the parking lot without the guarantee of the gravel lot. I think that's very concerning that we're selling such a grand plan without the acquisition of that land. I'd also like to say that saving one tree for 20 or 27 spots I don't think is necessary when we're adding 13 or more elsewhere. I know some of you are against the parking, saving parking on Salem, but that parking creates vibrancy, and people driving through town see the vibrancy of those businesses. The parking on Commerce Street, I would love for that to stay private, but at the very least, I think that needs to be permitted parking because of the limited parking that's already there. As far as the July 26th, I wish I could have attended, but I was on vacation. So, thank you.
Thank you. Marshall Barnes.
Mr. Mayor, Town Council members, Marshall Barnes, live at 103 South Salem Street, co-owner of Antiques on Salem, 114 North Salem. I just would like to say that I'm still concerned about you guys moving forward with final approval of most of the design plans until you can get the parking situation nailed down. So again, as most of the other designs are very dependent upon you being able to deliver that parking. If you can't do that, I think they start falling apart. So with that said, my only other major point is that I'm adamantly opposed to removing all parking on Salem Street. I think that's the wrong direction to go. So I do hope you would support the plan that does leave some parking on Salem. Ideally, I would like to see at least half of the spaces left, maybe 15. If 10's all we can get, 10's all we can get. But we need to leave some parking on Salem. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison Gant.
Good evening, council and staff. My name is Allison Gant. I'm a resident at 1006 Cuttington Court here in Apex. I just wanted to thank everybody for all the time and effort that's gone into this plan. I think it's very exciting, and I have strong support for pretty much all of the elements that have been presented over the course of several years. I really hope that this council goes big because the downtown is the primary attraction here, and I'm excited to see all the changes that we're talking about. Specifically, I would like to voice my support and several of my neighbors' support for what is option C, particularly the curbless parking with drop zones. The elimination of the majority of parking, many people believe will be useful for, if you eliminate the parking, if you retain the parking, you're locking in the current design, the current tenants. Eliminating the majority of the parking and going to drop zones creates flexibility for future growth in downtown and possible changing tenants. The drop zones can't just be limited to, or the current parking, if left, can't just be used by retail. There is a concern that those limited spaces would be used by restaurants or people there long term. And then slowing down traffic while looking for parking becomes dangerous to pedestrians. Particularly the curbless feature, I was unaware of the benefits. I think too that I would like to see from that are the flexibility for festivals and events, as well as the improved accessibility options for people not having to overcome the curbs was something I never even thought about, and I thought that was a very interesting benefit. Personally, I really am excited about seeing all the benefits downtown, as many trees as possible, and I liked the downtown plan that eliminated it and had nice symmetry, because that's just how I see that benefit. And I will support my council member Gant's support of the bollards as a design. He has been very adamant in pointing them out as we've been traveling recently. And I've come to see a lot of creativity and interesting uses that those could lend towards our downtown. But overall, I just want to say thank you for all of your hard work, and I'm excited to see these changes.
Thank you, Ms. Gant. Jason Hillman.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Good afternoon, Council. Thank you for being here. I want to thank Shannon Cox, her whole team, Stantec, everyone that has gotten us to this point. I think that being an Apex High graduate, growing up in Apex, I've seen the town grow. I've seen where we are now, and where we could be. And I'm in full support of every decision and every recommendation that they have. I'm not opposed or supportive of A, B, or C, D, or your F. I just want something to happen. I think that with growth comes change, development, all kinds of different opportunities that come about. I know there's a lot of concerns out there in different ways, and I think that it's apparent that there's compromises that are trying to happen. I think that if they were to have their way, it would be no parking, blah, 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 blah. But there's been concerns, and they've handled those concerns with compromises. So all that I want to say is I'm fully supportive of change, development, and growth. I see a significant value in extending sidewalks. I noticed that there are 200 parking spots hopefully going to be created. So we are solving problems here. But we need to do it with the realization that the few that have the concerns does not express the majority of what people want in this town. The surveys, the data, everything that has come about with the workshops and the different online polls, the data shows what the community wants. And I just think we need to be realistic when we think about these decisions around the actual data that we've collected over 2 years. So I think I appreciate everything that you guys have done with the compromises. I think that this is remarkable. I've seen stuff happen in downtown Cary, having a business there, and what the growth is going on there. I don't know if you have driven through it. I'm not for Cary or against Cary. I'm not for APEC. But at the end of the day, I've seen the growth. It's remarkable. I mean, businesses are flooding in. Everyone that's down there has sustained their business. It's just been incredible. And I think that down the road, as this actually transpires, people are going to realize that, wow, I can't believe we didn't do this sooner. So that's all I want to say. I really appreciate you guys. I really appreciate everything you do, and come get some ice cream.
Thank you, Mr. Hillman. Jack Patepka.
Mr. Mayor, Town Council, just want to reiterate what I've been saying throughout the whole process and what I said a few weeks ago to you guys here. I just urge everyone involved to consider the needs of the handicapped and the elderly, not only for parking, but throughout the whole process and the whole design of the downtown. ADA accessibility is really important to me personally because of my son's situation personally, which I won't get into, but as well as my customer base. Our business specializes in transferring old media, old family photos, slides, negatives, film reels, audio, everything you could think of. Now imagine taking all of your photo albums and all of your film reels and all your videotapes and carrying it from the Saunders Street lot to my business. And I guess I should back up. I'm Jack Otepka, I own 621 Productions, 118 North Salem Street. But imagine that, or imagine carrying it from one of the church lots. It can be very difficult. And another thing is just, a lot have been presented to me to, oh, well, you can use your back door. Well, my back door and the way the building is built is not ADA accessible, is not handicap accessible by any means. We also share a hallway with our neighbors. And so it's just not an option. One of the things I am for is obviously some spot out front to either be a drop-off or having in the spaces. I've really been appreciative of the compromise that we've been able to come up with. The other thing is the back on the back of the building on the on my side with the loop that's being proposed. It takes all of the customer parking that can be there, but it also takes away all of the parking for the employees that I have, for the other employees of the other businesses. And so that really is not a good option for us. But as I said, the big thing for me is the ADA accessibility throughout the plan, not just parking, and for the elderly as well. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Marsha Lund.
So, Mr. Mayor, Town Council, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your phone call and letting me vent before this meeting. I'm Marcia Maynard Lund, for any of you who've known me since I grew up here, but long ago moved away. I am the parking lot, the gravel parking lot that everybody's talking about. You do not own it yet, and we have not talked about much of you owning it yet. So a lot of this meeting right now seems to me to be a little bit ahead of the ball that you put rolling until we make some agreements on this parking lot. And I'm all about growth for this town. I still own a lot of property here. All of my family is here. And I'm big on growth. I live 11 miles from your national capital in Virginia. I've watched what happens with small towns. I have a son who is an environmental geologist, engineer, who has 2 projects down here in North Carolina, who was down here in Apex last week at my request to look at what's going on. And he's all about growth. But you gotta back it up and get what you need to make it grow. And I think you have to start, if all of this is hinging on our parking lots on Saunders Street, you need to have them first. And that's all I have to say, and anybody who wants to add to it is welcome to my minute and a half, okay?
Thank you, Ms. Lund.
Thank you for your comment.
I have Mac and Pam Thorpe signed up. You want to use your time together?
Mr. Mayor, Council, thanks for having us tonight. I'm Mac Thorpe, co-owner with my wife Pam of the Rusty Bucket. And on July 1, we celebrated 17 years downtown Apex.
Congratulations.
And we are happy to be celebrating it. A couple things we're concerned about during the construction, whatever the plan may be, the disruption of the parking and the sidewalks, what it's going to do to traffic coming and going shopping. So that's a concern. All right. The last 5 retail stores that closed on Salem Street were not replaced by retail. So if we're not careful, Salem Street is going to become a restaurant bar zone and not a shopping zone in addition to other businesses. I don't think the parking situation is going to be resolved unless we entertain having a deck where we can park cars vertically. That's just our opinion, but we'd like to share that with you. We liked Plan B that we saw tonight. We're all for growth. We like to go forward. I think at the end of the day, we all need to recognize we've got to compromise, and there'll be some things we will like about it, and there'll be some things we won't. So that's what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thorpe. All right. Ms. Pam Thorpe, or you? He spoke for you. Okay, just want to make sure. Thank you. All right, Cal Dennis.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Kyle Dennis. I'm an Apex Outfitter in Mission Market. We're all really passionate about this project, obviously, and I will definitely go along with what Jason said. I just want to see it move along. I was sending an email from 2014 on about getting a downtown plan made. We finally got one, and I know that everyone's not going to be happy with the final outcome. There's things that I like and dislike about all of these things, but I feel like if we don't go forward, then we never will. Cary, Fuquay, Holly Springs. Holly Springs didn't even have a downtown 5 years ago. Now they have one. They have a parking deck. All of these places have parking decks. My background, I used to intern with the planning department. That doesn't make me a expert on any of this, but if you ask me, my personal opinion, not doing a parking deck would be crazy. We can't think now, we have to think 10 years from now. Also, Stantec was hired by you guys. That makes them under contract by you guys, or you guys are signing the check. So if there was any sense whatsoever that the town did not want a parking deck, it makes me think that they probably wouldn't recommend one. I definitely think there needs to be a parking deck. If we can make an option Z and put that in there, that would be great. As far as the trees that Terry, you brought up, and the last thing, we're not cutting down those 2 trees. Those trees are stressed. When I did work for the town, it was because I have a degree in horticulture. I would say before we make that decision, we should have them looked at and assessed. But 27 spots, that's basically what we're taking out on Salem Street. So we're getting a new building that's going to bring anywhere from 100 to 150 people working each day. So that's a whole nother realm of parking. And then as far as the solar, I love solar. I think it's a great idea, but I think right now it's like without knowing if we really need to put a deck in that spot or possibly do more, development down the road, it's probably too soon. I do think there's opportunities for you guys to maybe go to building owners and lease rooftop space to put, photovoltaics in. I mean, the Tobacco Mule and Exchange building is a double pitched roof that's, almost 18,000 square feet back. I'm not speaking for the landlord, but there are those options out there to go to people like that to get things like that done. But I just want to see things move forward, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis. And that was the last person that's on the roster to speak tonight. So with that, we will close public hearing for comment, and it's back to council. It's discussion time, leading to possible motions on each item. So, Mr. Dalton, I would ask that you keep us on track here. There's so many moving parts.
So again, these are the possible motions that we're presenting today. And you've heard, our input on these and public comments. So if you'd like to, go through these one by one as motions, or if you have any other questions as follow-up from the public comments, I can answer those at this time.
Before we move on, you had mentioned the Saunders Street. That we want to revisit that, and I just want to hear from my colleagues. Are you all good with what we voted on before with the Saunders Street? Saunders lot, excuse me.
Yeah. The basically the maximized parking option versus the preserved green option, where the preserved green would retain the large oak tree and most of that green area, but would, you would lose 27 spaces that you would otherwise gain with the option that removes that green area.
And I think we lean towards the preserved green, right, colleagues? Or
4-1.
4-1, okay.
There's two more. I'd love to hear it now.
Okay. I had a question. If we move forward with the preserved green option, would there be other ideas about additional gathering space in that area of green? Is that an option? Or
would you say with keeping the tree or removing the tree?
Well, doesn't the preserved green mean keeping the tree?
Correct, yeah. So it is a green space, so passively people are able to walk through that area if they so choose. We're not proposing to do anything with that area. So in effect, it is sort of a gathering space. So some of the comments from people who like the green area is the fact that it provides shade. It is a large tree that, you're not going to be able to plant a new tree and see it grow to that size anytime soon. So it's not a formal gathering space, rather it's a passive green space as it is today.
So the idea would just be keep it as a passive green space, more than likely?
Correct, yeah, we would try to minimize, to preserve green, we try to minimize encroachment on that area because, if the tree, whether or not the tree's stressed now, the more we encroach on that green area, the more potential there is to stress it even more and lose that tree. And we did discuss, if you choose the preserve green option, there could be an opportunity to come back in the future if you had to remove the tree and expand parking to that area. Of course, you're losing, some of the efficiency you would have if you went ahead and removed it up front with the project. It would cost more later to pave that area versus doing it up front.
Thank you.
I mean, so this evening, I don't know, I feel like more things are coming up related to parking. And if the beautiful tree is there to be beautiful and be a tree, but it's not an active space that it's going to be part of, but parking would be an active space, then I'm actually thinking about leaning towards parking, to be honest, from what I've heard tonight.
And I think I said this last time, but we're creating a lot of great gathering spaces, and that space will be, I think, even less utilized than it is already, which I think it's only kind of moderately utilized now. So I think the addition of the great spaces we're creating changes the equation a little bit, in my opinion, about that.
I would just add, of course, I don't vote, but parking is premium. I mean, we need it. So I would have to agree with my colleagues to my right.
My thought is preservation of the tree. We can always come back later and add those parking spots in and utilize that space if that tree does get stressed to the point where we do need to remove it. At this point, I still feel like we need to preserve it.
Yeah, I'm with Audra. We can cut down, we can't uncut down a tree. But if we need to later, we can cut it down. If it starts to get stressed, it starts falling over.
And I would agree. I vote for preserving the tree.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on.
Okay. So, and I understand the motion was made last time and seconded and approved, so we would retain that same approval. As far as the solar canopy, again, the design team recommended excluding that for the reasons I discussed, just based on the information we had at the time, looking at the downtown plan. But you did hear a presentation tonight about the solar canopy, so the motion could be to include, exclude, or explore further. So.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I move we include the solar canopy.
All right, we got a motion to include a solar canopy.
Leave me hanging.
Motion to exclude the solar canopy.
Okay, we got a motion to exclude solar canopy.
I'd
Is
like
there a
to move
second
that we
either?
table it for later discussion.
Not how this works.
All right, you other two, you have a motion?
No motion, just comments. I feel like, to spend, $900,000 on something that we may tear down before we even get return on investment from it, I think it's just premature. I like the idea of a solar canopy. I think that it's not a great idea right now to include it in the parking spaces.
Any other discussion on it?
Yeah, if I could summarize.
Sure.
So what I learned tonight is a payback is a lot quicker than I thought it would be. 15 to 19 years is excellent. So this isn't money we're throwing away. This is an investment that we're going to get paid back for. So I say keep that in mind. We also heard that if there is some sort of other structure, the solar panels can be reused. So it's not necessarily an entirely sunk cost. There's a possibility of still having a more useful life if we do go in a different direction, or another council goes in a different direction down the road. So I also think you have to consider the aspect of demonstrating our commitment to this 100% clean energy by 2040, 2045. That's coming up soon, and we need to make gestures like this. We need to find the opportunities to do something like this are few and far between to knock a chunk off of that. So I think if we're going to be true to that commitment, I don't see how we can't move forward with this.
I think it's worth mentioning the return on investment for our rooftop solar is 7 to 10 years, if I recall. So it's substantially more than double. And I think that's, I think there's one more shade than that estimate also suggested.
Let's do both.
It's worth. And we have a lot of roofs that don't have solar panels on them in town. Maybe not our own roofs, but a lot of school roofs, a lot of building roofs that I think we can work out deals that the return will be a lot faster than the 19 plus years.
There's also the possibility of putting the solar canopy out at Pleasant Park, parking out there. So I think we have other options to place solar canopies in other areas that may last longer. So
I point out to the council member that Pleasant Park is a lot farther along than we are here. Like if we think it's too late or we don't want to do it here, I don't see how we can retrofit Pleasant Park and do it, which is already under construction.
You also have an option to explore further and think about other things. So that's another option.
Okay.
I am very torn. I very much support solar, but I'm very concerned about the cost that we're seeing on this whole project. I mean, everything is higher than we originally expected it to be. And I think that's my collective concern. I mean, where's the money going to come from? Finance, can you help me with that in terms of the extra costs? I mean, we do have responsibility to pay for all this.
From taxpayers, right?
But that's my concern too, is that every piece of this, I think except for maybe one, is coming in quite a bit over what we originally thought it would be. Am I correct in that?
Yes, correct.
So that's my concern too. Although I'm very, I would like to say yes to solar, but I'm just concerned about the overall costs right now.
So I'm going to make a motion to explore this option of solar canopy further, to include things like grant funding and other structures that may be the pleasure of the council or the town. That's my motion, to explore further.
I'll second that because it sounds like we're not going to approve it, so it's better than denying it. So.
All right, got a motion and second. A motion to explore.
I have a history of voting against continuing things now. I'm moving against that.
I'm not continuing. I changed the language for you, just for you.
Exploring further is not continuing?
I just changed it just for you, exploring it further.
It sounds like continuing to me.
With an option, with clear direction around grant opportunities, what other structures we may look at. So I did it just for you.
Okay.
Okay, we got a motion and second. Further discussion on it? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
All right, motion passes 4-1.
And then next thing is the Commerce Street design, and I can bring up that image if you need me to bring it up again, but we're recommending proceeding with the Commerce Street design as proposed.
Okay.
I just have some questions about that again, or maybe just state some comments. In looking at and listening to the businesses and the business owners and the owners of the property, and in reading lots of comments from people, it seemed like there were three things that came up that stood out to me, and I'm also a small business owner, is listening to the business owners and the property owners. I'm concerned about employee parking. I'm concerned about how the trash and the recycling will be managed. And that really didn't, I don't think you spoke to that, Mr. Dalton, much today. But I'd like to hear more about that in terms of what the property owners and business owners want in terms of the trash and recycling. And then I think there was one other issue that came up. Just practicality and functionality for patrons of our businesses and our retail. Oh, and also the utility lines, of course. I think most of us are in agreement that the utility lines need to be cleaned up. So for me, it's the utility lines, it's the trash and the recycling, how are we going to manage that, and also business functionality for owners and employees. So I personally want to see employee parking on Seaboard and Commerce, and I may be in the minority of that, but that's a concern for me, and I would like to see that happen. And I don't know how that fits all into the motion. But those are three issues for me: utility lines, the trash and recycling, and the functionality for owners and employees. I don't really see Commerce and Seaboard as great gathering spaces for people, given these are the backs of businesses. To me, that is not a priority. It's gathering space.
So with respect to Commerce Street, with some of the issues you brought up, so certainly if we're improving, as we're showing this parking area to provide a gathering space and provide these parking spaces, we're expending public funds, and as part of that, we would expect to acquire that property as public property and manage that property as public property. I don't know if there's an option where we can do those improvements and then turn around and give particular business owners, the right to park in particular spaces. That's one of those issues where, as an engineer, I would recommend then not doing anything. If we want it to remain private, under private control, then we wouldn't expend those public funds to improve those areas. If we do expend public funds, acquire the property and improve those areas, there may be ways to designate certain, and we heard something about zone parking, designate certain zones. Again, that comes with parking enforcement. But I don't know all the legal issues with that. If you're opening up to where residents or particular business owners can obtain a zone permit versus the general public after you've expended public funds to improve an area and acquire that as public property. So there's a lot of interesting legal issues that I can't answer with respect to that.
Ms. Hoey, could you offer any insight into that?
Just to say that there are legal issues involved with that we would need to look into, what sorts of reservations that we could make for public parking to be reserved solely for particular businesses or individuals.
So you're saying we have to look into it?
And with respect to the trash consolidation on Commerce Street, we're talking about now, we did look back there at opportunities to do compactors and trash consolidation. There were a number of issues. One being the locations we identified where we could potentially put a compactor. Those business owners were not interested in having compactors on those properties. So that would be a concern moving forward, trying to acquire that property and place a compactor. A business owner doesn't want us to acquire property and place a compactor. There's also a number of cans back there where certain businesses, the way they operate, like to have those cans close to their business, with the restaurants not having to walk to another location further down the street. But some of the things we discussed, and Colleen and I met with owners back there, and we walked the alley. We would recommend moving forward more coordination with those business owners, trying to consolidate, remove some of those cans and consolidate some of those private pickups, trying to screen some of those areas, and that may be a cooperative effort between the town and certain business owners to try and improve that. But again, we pursued a larger consolidation effort back here and just didn't have a spot where it would work. There were just very limited opportunities based on what's out there today on Commerce.
So are you saying you're proposing that there would be one consolidated
with respect to Commerce Street, we are not recommending a public trash consolidation effort with this project. What we're recommending is that there would be outreach to the business owners later for screening and other things to try and reduce the amount of cans back there. But owners would still have private pickup similar to what is today. We would not have a public effort.
And on Seaboard?
Well, Seaboard, I mean, I can talk about that now, but we will get to Seaboard later, so I didn't want to mix the two.
That's right.
Yep. And you mentioned utilities, too. A specific question with the utilities beyond what we talked
No,
about?
just that I'm in favor of cleaning those up, as it sounds like most of the comments have been.
So this is part of the comments as well. I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about separating pedestrians and people enjoying the area and then motor vehicles. So just figuring out how we separate people from that.
Well, with Commerce Street, there's very limited space to do anything back there. Currently, it's all, except for the town's parcel on the corner there, it's all private property back along that street. So if the town is going to do improvements back there, we would need to acquire some kind of right-of-way. Part of the improvement is visual. As you can see, we're trying to delineate the travelway on Commerce Street a little bit better from the backs of those businesses. With our plans, we would also improve drainage, because drainage was one of the concerns with the downtown plan, and there's some issues back there. But the bulk of the work would be done up there closer to Commerce Street, where we're adding those parking spaces, adding hardscape for a gathering area. That's where we would intend for pedestrians to primarily be. We're not necessarily trying to encourage pedestrians to walk down the alley, but we are trying to improve the appearance of the alley, the delineation of the alley, so people know the difference between that travelway and the backs of the businesses.
So this is it's switched from the idea originally of it being some sort of gathering space to more just addressing parking in the back, addressing the utility, putting it underground, and addressing any stormwater issues in the area. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, there's just not much room to work with once you get beyond the corner there at Saunders Street, where we're adding the parking. And even the roadway we're showing there, I think we're maybe have 12 feet delineated, so it's extremely narrow. It is a one-way alley today, but we're just not able to really widen that given the location of those existing structures and features that are out there.
Okay. Yeah, because Cheryl and I went back there to look at some of the areas, and I agree it's not a great gathering space unless there was a lot of cleanup having to do with garbage and different things like that. But I like the idea of this, but I also like the idea of zone parking for employees in the back. So.
Any other discussion?
I just agree with Councilwoman Collinsworth. I could approve this if there was zone parking for employees, but if not, I'll be voting no, just for clarity.
So what do we do with that? Send
Yeah.
I'd like to make some comments, I guess. First, I just want to take a step back and make sure we understand where we are in this process, because there's been some comments that we've made, some comments of public comment. We're at the very start of this. The reason we haven't acquired all this property or gotten easements or all that stuff is because we haven't done the thing where we officially told our staff we want to do this yet. That's what this meeting is, to say we're starting this process now. After this is when all the acquisition happens. So that's why, just recognize, I think you had a page earlier where it showed 5 phases, and we're at the end of phase 2. We did the study, now we're doing phase 2 where we're actually starting the thing. There's going to be a lot more of these meetings, I would think. The decisions we make tonight probably realistically aren't going to be 100% exactly what happens, because stuff will come up in design, stuff will come up in implementation. We'll have to come back and make changes, That's what happens. So we're at the very start of this, and I ask everyone to keep that in mind. And I think that comes down to some of the details too. I feel like some of the discussions we're having and the questions we're asking, they speak to what the next step is going to be. Like, we're going to do final design where we narrow down all the details. So it's okay to not know exactly where a trash compactor is going to go. We need to, the purpose tonight is to get something down on paper officially, as this is where we want to go as a town. And I also want to speak to the zone parking thing. And I just want to echo what our lawyer said. Like, we're a public entity. We're in the business of building public parking spots. Saying there should be zone parking means we shouldn't build a lot there, and the business or the owner that wants to do zone parking can buy the lot and do zone parking. I don't think we can do zone parking. That's my opinion. So.
And I would just like Ms. Hoey to investigate that and report back and give us more information. And it doesn't sound like she's prepared to do that tonight, so.
I would say, I think we've done a lot of investigation, and we need to get something done on paper tonight. And if something comes up during the investigation, we got to switch plans. We got years before, we got at least 2 years before, a shovel hits the pavement, So we've had a lot of meetings, a lot of investigation. At some point, we have to put something down on paper and say, yes, we want to do this plan. And I think that's what we're here for tonight. So my motion is to approve proceeding with Commerce Street and including the relocate utilities as presented.
All right, we got a motion and a second. And I just want to add to what you said, Councilman Mahaffey. That's why I'm supporting the staff. They making the recommendations, they did all the work, and they create the vision, and we move forward. So we got a motion and a second. Further discussion? None?
I would say to my colleagues, if you have concerns, there'll be opportunities for input during the design process. If we want to give some further input, we don't have to finalize in the details tonight. But in order to start the process, I think we have to approve this motion tonight.
And I think I would just like to say, maybe I need some more clarity, but I just want to be sensitive to our business owners and to their parking issues and to the employees' parking issues. So can you help me, Mr. Dalton, with that in terms of how those concerns might be integrated moving forward?
Well, this is a question of moving forward with final design. So the designs we're presenting is what we would tell our consultant, okay, now you're released to do final design. We would not want to get well into that process and then have to back up and change our designs. Certainly we could take out, if we decide we get to the end of the road with final design and there are some things we just can't live with, council has the ultimate decision to decide, do we build it or not build it? But the changing gears obviously has cost implications and adds complexity and confusion during the process. As far as the private business owners, we understand that. It's very difficult for us to address that question without additional legal input, and I think we're going to have to probably sit down and kind of go through what these plans are proposing to do, so we have a better understanding of that. One of the concerns we did hear from private owners is that, well, if you're improving this to public, if you're changing this to public standards, the public's going to park there, obviously you're going to have to acquire property from me. However, a lot of the owners do have concerns about losing, their portion of their lot where they may currently park vehicles or their tenants may currently park vehicles. We have tried to incorporate more parking overall in the downtown plan. So while you may not get your space at your building like you do today, the intent is to provide more opportunities throughout downtown. So you may lose some of that convenience. We can attempt to, through our discussions with legal staff, figure out some way to enact a type of zone parking. But even with that, it would be very difficult to assign a specific business owner to a specific spot behind their specific business, if that makes any sense. So, even if we could establish a zone, it might be in a general area, but it might not be quite as convenient as it is today. And I don't know how guaranteed it is that they would get a spot, because it wouldn't be at that point private property anymore.
And how many parking spaces are going to be allocated on Commerce?
On Commerce Street, the change there is we're providing, I believe what we showed in the image was 5 additional spaces. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh, no, sorry. A net gain of 2 standard and 2 accessible spaces. So currently that area today, based on where you can park along those property lines, we're potentially adding spaces with that. So it's more, but if we're expected to find a way for certain business owners to be able to park in certain spaces or in that specific area, that's going to be more detailed discussion about how that's done.
But just in general, can you tell me how many parking spaces we're talking about on Commerce?
On Commerce? Oh, this, these are the only spaces. So as far as the spaces we're proposing, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 standard spaces and 2 accessible spaces.
Okay.
And the rest of Commerce, there are currently areas behind those buildings where you can park cars in certain areas, and we're not proposing to change the ability for those owners to park in those areas like they do today. It's only at that corner.
Do you have an estimate of how many parking spaces that is for the owners that wouldn't be touched?
Are you trying to?
Sure.
Are you, okay, so I'm just gonna do little pointers. So you're referring to like the areas like behind these buildings? So each of these, like for certain businesses like Edward Jones, Southern Home Crafts, these are like about 1 parking space per, that people park, those tenants typically park there. Salem Street Pub parks directly behind. They have a compact, their dumpsters and stuff like that. So actually they park on this side. Bro Preschool has their parking lot to this side. We just don't indicate it. Those all those private spaces stay. And there is space. We have this pull-off area here. That is currently people like load and truck deliveries currently happen, and all of that still stays, but it designates that space more officially with it, because you have a 20-foot drop here to down to a 15. So there are truck parking areas for loading and unloading that happen behind Commerce Street. This is one of the reasons for the utility cleanup, because a lot of times we have trucks that come through this area when they're doing their deliveries, and those lines are pretty low and they take those out. But all of these, with the exception of this end here, all of the existing parking spaces behind these businesses, like Working Design Decor has about 2 parking spaces. Provincial uses their rear, which it's not really indicated here if we had an aerial. They have their garbage storage completely behind their building, so there actually is no parking. It's just used for storage. So it all depends on each individual business, but all of those existing spaces of where these people park, that all stays.
Thank you.
Other questions or discussion? We have a motion and a second to proceed. Are we ready to vote? All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passed unanimously.
And so the option to that was relocating utilities. Was relocating utilities part of that motion? Or is
Yes,
that,
yes.
okay.
Yes.
Excellent. So I will check that off. So on Seaboard Street, our recommendation was to proceed with that design with the loop and the parking arrangement that we show as part of that.
So again, I'm going to come back and ask the same kinds of questions.
Okay.
So I was appreciative of your clarification on the Commerce, because a good amount of those private spaces stay, but what about here on this
So
design?
this is a much more convoluted issue, because the way they park cars, they're not indicated in this space. So like, for instance, for Woomer Insurance, he kind of stacks cars. So like, because it's all employee parking. So he can I believe Mr. Woomer would tell you, he could probably park 6 to 8 cars back there, depending on how he stacks them, because people can jigger in and out, and you can ask people to move and back out. There is, with the loop that was created here, and Stantec can talk to this too, this is an unofficial sort of loop that is actually used on a regular basis within that gravel space that's back there. High Craft Beer Market already has sort of a temporary like area that they use back behind their space that they don't park in, but it all depends on the day. So it changes, for lack of a better term. I would say Stylish Living and Productions, I believe they would say that they probably have about 6 spaces, if that's right, Tom? 8 spaces that they have back there.
3 businesses.
Yeah, for the 3 businesses that are there. And then as far as behind Mission Market, currently what's used there is for the surveyors. So there's a survey business in here, and they use it to park all of their survey trucks. So that's where those acquisitions would come. So it's a hard estimate. I know that we did our best to kind of give you the what's there currently, whether they're to compliant standards. which we have to design these projects to, or whether they're just they're more of a haphazard situation back there. And there are, the only thing that does actually have official parking designated is along Elk Foods. So that is an official change of what's currently striped for parking along Elk Foods. So that is actually an accurate estimate, because there is no handicap space anywhere on that side of Seaboard Street either. So it's a nice net gain, and we don't currently have a handicap space on the other side, on the CSX side, that we did with the 50 additional parking spaces when those went in, what was it, about 2 years ago? Yeah.
So part of my question is, for clarification, will all of the business owners and parking be taken with this proposed?
So it's the same answer that we gave before. So this is an acquisition. Yeah. So with the compactors, on that side of the street, this all comes down to that zone question you were asking about. Could you zone these spaces that are currently being used as kind of private spaces for these properties? Could you zone those? So that's the same thing. But in the drop-off loop, what you do get for usefulness within the drop-off loop, you get, again, a staged area for trucks to park and do deliveries, which we don't have a designated actual loop. It allows for drop-off zones. So in this curve here, I don't know that people can understand. So like, these are parking spaces that could be used for easy access. And then there's some, I know people kind of mentioned that they don't currently have great access from the rear of their property through. But those are design things that potentially, whether through the downtown facade program or other programs, we might be able to help address some of those concerns further in a future development that might address some of those issues that were kind of brought up today.
You mean helping them with access in the back of their stores?
Yes, no comment, sir.
Yeah, and to answer the question, again, what you were asking is like the loss of the spaces. All this infrastructure along the backs of these businesses shown here would all be intended to be public acquisition. So the question then would be, how do we manage that? Can we do zone parking? Is there a certain time of day restriction or certain hourly restriction we would put on those spaces?
And in this design, I don't know if it's easy to show, but there are two compactors. Unlike on the Commerce Street side, you do get consolidated which bookend, which is nice, and also it helps out because you've got the restaurants that essentially bookend that side of the street too. So one of the issues with Commerce Street relative to the issue was taking trash from like maybe the middle of the center and like dragging trash up and down. That doesn't really happen the same way here, and it consolidates them in a much nicer way. And because they're compactors, will hopefully reduce the amount of smell that occurs back there.
I have a question about this, and I think this is something we discussed when we were walking that area. Is there a possibility of making Seaboard Street a one-way street and adding more parking back there if we do that?
It's difficult to answer that. I would say it would be difficult to add much more parking back there, making it a one-way street, because you can only make it so narrow. I think the fire department, my understanding, circles in off Chatham Street to come around that way. So, I think that would be the direction of flow from Chatham Street heading north. And I'm not sure exactly how you would add spaces. You'd have to do quite a bit of reconfiguration if you squeeze that down, and you really are not supposed to go per fire code down below 20 feet of clear roadway. So if it's at least 20 feet there today, we'd want to retain that, and I think it's a little bit wider than that as shown here.
Okay. And I think I would just say my only concern with this is not trying to have some parking for business owners and their employees. And I don't know if there's any compromise on that other than having Ms. Hoey. And I understand what you're saying,
Yeah,
that's my concern.
Yeah, and in the past, the town has looked at this area in the past and gone through some designs years ago, looking at how to improve this area. So it's kind of a long-running debate with this area as to how best to utilize it. The loop was something new with this project. In the past, we've looked at a more conventional parking lot striping, which might increase the number of spaces somewhat to help with that concern. but then you lose the formalized loop for, trucks being able to load and unload with that option, something the consultant came up with. And then when they first came in, they didn't have the extra parking spaces coming off of that, because part of the downtown vision was to create gathering space back there to, energize the alleys. That was a big part of the downtown master plan and parking study. So I did ask the consultant, knowing that there would be concerns about parking, to add back those parallel spaces and those radial spaces that come off of that loop to try and provide some extra parking back there to offset some of the parking that would be lost by businesses that, as Colleen described, currently stack up today that aren't technically standard spaces, but it's their private lot, so they can stack up however they choose as long as they're on their private lot.
So sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to make the point that our action tonight, if we choose to approve this, wouldn't be the final word on this parking lot. If businesses were to lose spaces back there, it would be because they sold them to us to do this plan, right? This starts the conversation with them about, hey, here's our plan. This is what we want to do. We've approved this. And hopefully the business owners, the property owners rather, would look at that and they would see the benefit to their property, to their business, to that space being improved, and say, yeah, you know what, I'd like to sell my property to be part of this. And we have to get, 5, 6 different properties to agree. And as Mr. Dalton said, this has been tried before, and it's failed before because we couldn't get everyone to agree. And we're going to try again, maybe tonight. So this isn't the end of the conversation. This is the start. There'll be plenty of time. And in fact, like I said, the next step would be to officially engage them, to show them this plan. I know many of them are here, but everyone say, we want to do this. We'd like to acquire property to do it. And negotiations begin. So I just want to make sure it's clear that this is not the final word. And a lot of these discussions, that's what happens next.
Thank you. Anyone else?
But if the property owners say they don't want to sell, then what's going to happen?
Then our staff will come back to us and say, they don't want to sell. What do you guys want to do? Do you have another idea? And then we're back here having this discussion again, another meeting. And that's, again, I think what's happened before several times in the past decade or two.
Can we move forward? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve, staff recommendation.
Well, there was options for this.
Oh.
Yeah, and there's a relocate utilities option, and we recommend with the compactors, because there are compactors no matter what, but we would recommend exploring a lease option with the compactors.
So I move we approve staff recommendation, we look at the utilities and lease the compactors.
Second.
All right, motion second. Further discussion?
I just want to say, I think this is the most underrated and potentially most important part of this whole plan, to be honest. This loop is brilliant, and I think it will be a gathering space for people back there. And I think they are doing a little bit, but when you get those trees and everything, it's going to be a dynamite space. So I'm really excited about this.
I want to say I do appreciate evaluating the backyard access. I look forward to hearing how that turns out.
All right. Hearing no more discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
All right, motion passes 4-1.
And the next item is the Peak on Salem Alley. I'll show that image. So again, this is the image. So, formally cutting off access to the alley for vehicles from Salem Street. So there would still be alley to the two accessible spaces we would be adding on the back side over on the Seaboard Street side, providing an area where we do show a stage here, which would be, we would anticipate a private effort for that. We would create the pedestrian-oriented space to facilitate that. And as you can see, some landscaping and pedestrian easements through that area to allow a pedestrian, gathering space.
Further questions?
So one of the comments was related to noise for the residential area when you add the stage. So can you talk about that?
Yes, so we would not be proposing to add the stage as part of the project. We would anticipate that would be a proposal from, private business to add that. As part of that application, if they want to move forward with that, I think we would certainly consider that. And planning department has certain regulations that they would have to follow. I think the noise complaint is, a legitimate concern that could be addressed in with some, maybe some screening elements or some other things if that is proposed.
So what are we really doing here? Just acquiring the property and making it a public space for business to improve later?
We would anticipate keeping, since it's not officially parking, staff would propose to obtain easements through this area, make sure we have all the utility easements we need, make sure we have all the pedestrian access easements we need. But most of it, we would propose to keep as private property if possible, because most of it would be available for public/private use as a pedestrian space. And we'll have to talk through those details. As we get into the final designs and nail this down, there's a conversation that has to happen between final designs and the property exhibits and appraisals we have to do to figure out what we need to acquire. And sometimes those conversations, we're going to figure out what the town is actually going to need as part of that process before we go to the business owners.
Okay.
Motion to proceed with this project?
All right, motion Gant.
Second.
Second, Mahaffey. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Passes unanimously. We'll move on.
So the next one is the Salem Streetscape. So there are a number of options with this, but to refresh, we had an option A with pickup drop-off space on each side of the street with curb. We had an option B, which was curbless with parking. We recommend the 10 parking spaces, but we also recommend retaining vertical curb. So it's an alternative variation on option B. And then there's also option C, which was the curbless with the drop zone on each side of the street. And the other issues we were looking at with that motion was a lease of smart trash cans, including the signal pole upgrade at Chatham Street, including pavers in the design, which was what was shown as part of the rendering for the design, including and the animation, and also the lighting control for the catenary lighting across Salem Street.
Could you refresh about smart trash cans?
Smart trash cans. So yeah, Colleen wants to talk about smart trash cans, so I'll let her do that.
Maybe I need one at home.
They're solar, and they actually have like a little key fob that you can go past. They're a compactor. They're a mini compactor. So, and they have two options. You can have recycling. So they allow for, they're very specific. So you don't get a lot of this like errant trash that doesn't fit. It really is truly litter. So some of the issues with public trash cans is that people try and put things that aren't really public trash in public trash cans. So this would negate that. Plus, because they're compactors, it allows for a larger amount of waste and reduces the amount of pickups. And because they are enclosed, just like a larger scale, they reduce smell as well. So there's certain benefits to smart. And it also, with these, because they are smart, there's an app. So like our lovely street workers and stuff like that, they would get a notification when the trash can was full, so they'd know when to go back. And the cool thing about the key fob is it gets full, you go back with the key fob, you compact the trash, and then you may even get a little bit more time between pickups. But it also does notify you when your trash is ready to be picked up. So there's certain nice benefits to it. And we're, energy efficient.
Does that help us with our clean energy goals at all, having smart trash cans?
Well, it reduces the amount of garbage trucks and pickups, so.
There you go. There you go.
And the lease option includes warranty, annual inspection and cleaning, and other things that come with a lease versus having the capital project purchase where you have to take on those items yourself.
Good, very good. Questions?
So many pieces to this. I'm trying to figure out the best way to handle this. We have curbless options, how many spaces, and that kind of thing. So.
Well, it sounds like the maximum spaces you're recommending is 10.
That's correct. I mean, we tried to balance, and I understand there's been discussion about could you add 5 more spaces back. But as you add spaces back, no matter what you look at, you're taking away. You'll be taking away more street trees. And street furniture and those kind of things. Out of the street trees we created, we took out 3 trees to go from the 2 pickup drop-off zones to the 10 spaces. And then, we were also looking at, trying to provide as much contiguous wide sidewalk as possible to really maintain that streetscape along the side of the road. So you start carving in more parking spaces, whether you do curb or curbless, it's going to encroach on that pedestrian area.
And I'm sorry, I know I asked this earlier, is it 10 spaces plus the 2 drop zones, or 8 spaces plus 2 drop zones?
It's 10 spaces, so the discussion was that, as part of the, ordinance enforcement process that would come later, we could establish however many pickup drop-off zones we want, whatever times we want, as part of that.
Sounds like 8 plus 2.
So we did have requests for, 15 spaces, and so I understand what you're saying now. So what number could we get to that's above 10, that is a sort of meet in the middle, where we don't lose so much of what you just spoke about? What number could we go? Could we do 12?
Well, I guess the question would be, if you look at the design, and I tried to go through this mental exercise myself because I anticipated a question like this. The question would be, looking at the businesses, looking at the arrangement on the street, looking at the street trees, where would you want to carve out that spot? So if you think about, if you can see the location of the street trees on this plan, you can stick another space in between 2 trees. And you would lose the street furniture there, you'd lose the wide sidewalk, but you wouldn't lose the trees on either side. If you create a bank of 3, if you extend 1 space to 2 spaces or 3 spaces, then you are losing that tree in between. So based on this plan, I guess I would put the question back and ask, where, based on this plan, where would someone propose that we add those spaces back? Because our concern is that we think we've reached our maximum based on what we're trying to achieve with the streetscape, trying to keep as many trees as possible, trying to keep at least, trying to keep not completely symmetrical, but at least where you've got a gap, you've got 1 tree on one side of the street, even though you've got a gap on the other side of the street, and not taking away too much of the wide sidewalk in areas where we think we need the wide sidewalk.
Mayor Pro Tem, I did this exercise and tried to create this puzzle, and I couldn't do it better than this. And I'd also note that we have ice cream shop coming, or a fudge and ice cream shop coming in, that's going to be less utilized because of it's going to have the parking in front of that. So things change, and it's already changed from this design to make it less desirable to have the parking in the front of that location. But I didn't see, at least with the current tenants, I didn't see you're knocking out somebody's sidewalk that would want it every other way you do it, I think. So what I came to conclude.
Thank you.
So I think there's another discussion about curb versus curbless. I know you're recommending the curb. One of the things that I really want to advocate for is the curbless design on this, mainly because it makes it more seamless, it makes it more inviting, from what I have seen with those designs before. It also makes it more accessible for people who have difficulty navigating those steps and those curves. So I would recommend option B, keeping those 10 parking spaces and having that curbless design with bollards, which is.
Can we do it one at a time? Can we build the curbless by itself? I'd like to do that.
I think, yeah, I concur with Councilmember Gann. It sounds like there's considerable discussion on each of these points, and previously we've done them as a group. Maybe this time we just go through each decision one at a time, see what 3 votes are.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to go curbless because of the accessibility and the bollards and just the new look that would be, I think, very appealing to people.
Going out of order, man.
Parking spaces.
There's no specific order, so you can.
They're all independent, right? They're all independent, okay.
And you can vote for smart trash cans first if you want to.
I will second that.
I'd actually speak out against that. I believe the curb option feels more like Apex, and I'm concerned curbless. It's not going to, with the bollards, isn't going to feel like what downtown is today, and I'd rather err on the side of preserving kind of the feel of Apex as it is today in this decision.
Yeah, and the way I feel about curbless, I think accessibility is like something that I really think about a lot, but I also think about safety, and I just can't figure out how we you know, or keep parking, keep vehicles moving, and then, you know, and not just that. I mean, things that happen when people have some kind of medical episode. It doesn't have to be that someone's driving too fast, right? So I don't know how to deal with that, how I feel about safety. So for me, I think I have to go with curb. That's what my pleasure would be. Because unless you convince me otherwise of those concerns.
My argument would be you're guaranteed to have the wheelchair accessibility, you're guaranteed to have that. The safety is, I think, questionable whether it's safer or not, is how I would argue that.
And
For sure, wheelchair.
I mean, I don't know the proper answer. I don't. I mean, I'm a health advocate. I'm not an engineer. I'm not I really don't know. I really don't know.
So to be clear what we're talking about, if we do the curbless, we'll have the bollards every, how many feet down the street?
I think those are spaced out about every, is it 5 feet apart?
Well, it's a mix of it's a mix of bollards and
fairly close, yeah.
It's a mix of bollards and other structures, right? That serve as the bollards. Is that right?
Well, yeah, but the bollards are pretty evenly spaced.
The bollards are there in front of the other structures. Okay.
Yeah, it's where I think there's gaps in the bollards where the street furniture is located.
Yes.
But otherwise, you have the bollards underneath the trees and spaced evenly throughout.
I don't know. Maybe I need someone from public safety to speak to that for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, our understanding, and I talk quite a bit with our traffic engineer that works with a lot of our safety issues and stuff, and it is my understanding it is a relatively high volume of traffic out there to be recommending against curb, to go with a curbless design. However, that is why we've recommended the bollards to address that safety concern. So it's more of a European design with the curbless and with the bollards, and we'll do our best to address all those safety concerns with the infrastructure that's put out there. But it's still not going to, I don't think it's going to completely address the concerns some people have about lack of curb, that appearance of safety.
Ms. Cox, you had something?
Yes, they are spaced 5 feet 8 inches apart.
Okay.
You say 5 feet 8 inches?
Yep. I was off by 8 inches. So.
Okay, thanks for that detail.
Okay, any other discussion on it?
Just a comment, I'm very torn on this curbless versus, because I'm a big fan and I think a number of on the council are too, about mobility issues are so important to us. But it sounds like staff, you've probably wrestled with this as well, I'm assuming, and you're recommending curb. Maybe it's the illusion of safety. I don't know, but it sounds like that's your recommendation, and part of me wants to honor that, even though mobility issues are very. I see you over there nodding.
Mobility is huge, right? I mean, it'll be awesome for the people that need that.
Yeah, and just in full disclosure, maybe I shouldn't say this because you're still on the fence, but I'm not concerned about safety of the curbless design at all. Like the bollards, they're going to stop anything trying to go through them. To me, it's the look and the feel of it. I prefer the curb.
Do you think it's more consistent with Apex, with the feel of Apex? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, yes.
Okay. Anyone else?
I guess one more question I'd have related to that is, in its current form where we do have curb cuts where people use them, right? So, I mean, have you heard people say, I don't have enough, there's not enough of those downtown?
I mean, I would probably defer to planning since they get more of the pedestrian questions. We do occasionally have requests for more mid-block crosswalks, certainly have requests for crosswalks and crossing opportunities throughout town, and we evaluate those. Again, from an engineering perspective, we would, for a relatively short block like this, we would guide people to the rapid flash beacon at one end or the signal at the other end, and would not try to encourage more mid-block crossings in that area just because, I mean, you do one, you're going to have some trees and other elements, so there's some site obstruction for somebody that might jump out in front of a car mid-block, and a car might not be expecting that person quite as much as they would when they approach an intersection. And then it also, people see that mid-block crossing and they think, well, I could cross, 10 or 20 feet down the street. If I can cross there, why can't I cross over here?
You good?
Councilmember Killingsworth, did you have any input on this? I mean, as my day job, I work with people that are older that have a lot of mobility issues, and I've also talked to plenty of people walking up and down the street as well, and One of the things they talk about is having to walk all the way to the end of the block to get across. They also talk about, some of the older people that I've talked to have discussed with me difficulties with hips and knees and different things like that, being able to get over those curves. So, you know, that, to me, that's my main focus with the curbless design. I think the bollards are there for safety. I think they address that issue, as you said. So, in my mind, the curbless is the better way to go to address all those issues.
Okay.
And Mayor Pro Tem, in your health advocacy work, do you have a strong opinion? Or?
Well, our health policy work doesn't usually talk about curb or curb.
Trying to be comprehensive.
Right, it's a different level, but I'm just, I don't know, I'm a little bit concerned. If you're telling me that more of our older adults, more of our people who have mobility issues, people who are carrying heavy things, if they're able to get out of their vehicle or off their bicycle or whatever and can move about the area and without really being connected with some kind of vehicle, and I'm going to have heartburn about it. I'm not going to be able to sleep. If you're going to tell me that that's going to be an insurance, I'm okay with that. But otherwise, I have some heartburn about what could happen. And like I said, I'm not a public safety person, I'm not a policy person, I'm not, you know.
One thing I wanted to add is I wanted to do the curbless versus curb first because I think the curbless becomes even more important if we go with the 10 spaces or whatever because of the mobility. I think mobility matters for the drop-off zones, but they matter even more with there's more area for cars. There are more cars that will be dropping off people if we leave the 10 spots. So the curbless, I think, is even more important in that respect. So that's why I wanted to do that first because I strongly feel about the whole thing, but especially the first part.
I think it will assist drivers better, or
people getting out of cars. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? So we have a motion again. You second? All right. Motion second.
And the motion is to approve for curbless, right?
Curbless, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no.
No.
All right. What is that? 3-2. Yes.
What was the no, I'm sorry?
Doja.
All right. Motion carries 3-2. All right. Next.
I'll make a motion that we approve option B
Okay.
as a design with the 10 spaces.
All right. Motion to approve
I
option
second
B
it.
with 10. Got a second. Discussion?
I plan to oppose this because I think those trees are going to make a big difference, and we're gaining 10 spaces for 3 trees after one big tree, really big tree, we set 27 spaces. I think we should think about that if we're thinking about design and symmetry of this. This design, I think people will notice that these things are not all the way down. It'll be noticeable, and it'll look maybe not a lot different, but somewhat different when you're looking down the street, if we have all of them there versus not.
Yeah, and I did mention that I was changing from the first meeting we had after listening to people. That's the point, and I would like to see a few more spaces. And I asked the question, and looks like with this plan, there's not. So I would really prefer to have just a few more spaces.
I would concur with Councilmember Gant that I feel like this plan is proposed seems to be a plan for what we have on the ground today. We have the spaces exactly in front of retail. We have the sidewalk in front of restaurants, and things are going to change, and we need a plan that's good for the long term. This process has gone on for 2-3 years, and we've gotten a ton of input. And removing the parking spaces has been the overwhelming favorite in every single survey we've done of the citizens, 70% plus each time.
Go ahead. Anybody else? Okay, so we got a motion and a second for option B. All right, ready to take a vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
No.
All right. Motion's denied, 2-3.
Okay. I guess I'll make the motion for the option C.
Second.
All right, motion second.
Can we go back and look at option C for a second, please?
So option C is just, no parking, just 2 drop zones, right? No on-street parking, right?
Correct.
Discussion, anyone?
You know, we mentioned things changing, and I think that the comment was about a lot more restaurants and bars. I think that will be the reality, and this will be more, this will future-proof us more for what I think is actually going to come regardless of what we do on this vote. And they will be more successful if it's like this versus when the narrower sidewalks. You know, that will knock out a lot of the places where maybe a different kind of business that could utilize this would want to go. And I think there's a future to this that we need to acknowledge that it's going to become more of an entertainment district, and that's what the downtown plan talked about. So I think this is what the future is here.
Okay. Further discussion?
I think we have, repeatedly heard from our retail businesses, they're concerned about drop-off in their customer base. If we take away parking completely from Salem Street, I'm going to oppose this.
I would agree. I'm going to oppose this as well because I think it's important to have some on-street parking.
Okay. Ready to vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
No.
You no?
No.
Okay. Motion fails 2-3.
We just denied both the things.
Yep, so I guess the other option, would be stop design, redirect, and we would need instruction on that going into before we go into final design. So.
We're doing something tonight. We can't delay this anymore.
We need to make a decision tonight.
Yeah.
Well, I was clear that I made a different decision related to the tree, which would give us a few more spaces. So that was where I was, and that's where I am.
So you got.
It sounds like
I made it really clear, earlier that I changed my mind and related to removing the tree to get the spaces based on what I've heard, which it gives me heartburn to do, but that's where I am. And so that wasn't an option because we did not approve that. So that was where I am, and that's why I voted this way.
It sounds like
That vote was getting rid of 3 trees just now.
No. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I want more spaces. And so the vote that you and I were on related to that we changed, right? And we took the pause on, I asked for it, would have given us more spaces in the other plan. And so I just want more parking, and that's where I am.
So do you want to offer a modified option B motion?
I don't know if I do. I need more parking. So I said what I wanted to do earlier. So.
And I think you were asking for one more on each side, 12. Is that what you? Or
I asked, could we get to 12? That was my question.
Staff, what does that look like? Yes.
Can I request that we have a short break so that we can discuss and consult?
How much time do you need?
With 10 minutes, please.
All right, 15. All right,
All right.
take a 15-minute break. proceed.
We are, so I'll open it back up with any questions you have.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move we reconsider the vote on the option B with 10 spaces.
Got a motion, option B with 10 spaces.
I mean, I would like to hear at least what staff has to say, based on the break that we just had.
Yes, so the concerns we would have is that if you look at the plan to add back, I think I heard, could we add back even 2 spaces? There are different ways to do that. One, to not take out any trees to add back spaces, you could do that mid-block here. The idea for this mid-block, though, was to provide a focal point in the middle of the block for wide sidewalks on both sides, a different orientation of street furniture. But you could, if you didn't think you needed that, wanted to keep the trees, but were okay with the narrow sidewalks and taking that back just to add parking, you could add a parking space on each the east and the west side in between those trees. So between 3 spaces and the 3 spaces, you'd have 1 space notched out in here between the trees, and on the other side, it'd be the same thing. So that's one potential option, which we wouldn't recommend, but if you're looking for 2 spaces, that's one way you could do it. Another option would be on the west side of the street, on the south end here, where you've got Wogan Real Estate, Local Fresh, and Southern Home Crafts in that area. You would take out the tree there and extend that single space into 3 spaces and narrow the sidewalk in that area. But again, we wouldn't recommend that either. But those are 2 potential, and there might be a dozen different ways you could arrange spaces to try and get 12 spaces. But you're taking away something no matter where you put them.
Okay, thank you.
So it sounds like your overall recommendation is still to go with 10.
Correct, yes.
And so I will say, what I was talking about before the break was that, I wanted to reconsider the issue of taking the tree out and having no spaces, which is in proximity, obviously. And then I would be okay with this.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any other discussion?
So let me just say, in support of my motion to reconsider, I want to get something done tonight. I'm uncomfortable with redesigning this on the fly. I'm uncomfortable with approving an option that the public hasn't seen, that hasn't gone through this process. We spent months and months, years on this. So I want to move forward with something tonight that's been presented, that's been discussed, that's been commented on. If it's not my preferred option, I'm going to go with my second preferred option. That's why I made the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman.
Are you willing to reconsider the other vote related to removing the tree, which gives the spaces, and I'd be fine with this?
No.
Okay, well, we discussed that, this is our final and all this other, it's the same thing related to, the tree, things could change, but, so that's what I'm telling you, that I would prefer to have a less passive use and remove the tree and have an active use. And if something changes and we can keep the tree, that's fine. But that's where I am. I'm asking for my colleagues to consider that for this. That's where I am in negotiating this.
Okay, anyone else? Okay.
Just for clarification, Mayor Pro Tem, you're talking about the center part?
No, I'm speaking of the, you want to show them the original one where it was 3-2 on the removal of the large tree that was a passive use? So if we're moving that tree, which just has a passive use, it's not going to be a gathering area, to have active use of parking, which is and close to this, then I'm okay with this. That's what I'm asking.
Oh, okay, that's different than what I was thinking.
I mean, I started the environmental committee of the council, right? Like, this is right, but I'm asking for spaces.
Yep, so to clarify again, what you're saying is you prefer reconsideration of the vote for option B for the Saunders Street parking in favor of option A for the Saunders Street parking, in addition to recommendation for the 10 on-street spaces for Salem Street.
Yeah, I would just go with the 10 if I can get these.
Oh, I see. I'm glad you clarified that. So you want to go back to A for that?
I want to know if I vote for this, will you go back to that? That's all, and then we're done.
I would consider that, yes.
I'd point out, Mr. Mayor, I mean, these are two separate motions, so we can have two votes on them.
Okay.
I think we need to have two votes on them, two reconsideration votes, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, anyone else? So right now, we have a motion on the floor, Councilman Mahaffey, on option B with 10 spaces.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we got a second. We'll go with Stallings on the second. All right, take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is that 3? Okay. Opposed, no?
No.
I voted with them for that.
Okay.
Because I'm asking for this other.
Okay. All right, so motion carries 4-1.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to reconsider the vote on the Saunders lot.
Yes, Mayor. So that was the vote to reconsider, which means
Oh,
you will
that's-
take up the vote again with regards to option B.
That's right.
Got it, okay,
Sorry.
got you. Okay.
So now we have a
Okay.
motion on the floor for option B again.
All right, thank you for the correction.
Yep.
All right, motion on the floor for option B. You made the motion.
That's already, I think the motion approving the previous vote made the motion, essentially. It's back on the floor, so we just vote or discuss more.
Any further discussion?
So we don't need to make a motion for the option?
Just
Okay.
vote.
We just vote, okay.
So we're voting on option B, 10 spaces downtown, right? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I just want to know if there's discussion, more discussion before we vote again. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
All right, 4-1.
Now, I would like to vote, reconsider for area Saunders lot.
Okay,
Second.
okay, motion second. Further discussion?
We're talking how many parking spaces again?
27.
27, okay.
So again, this is the vote to have the vote.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. All right, passed unanimously. All right, any other discussion?
So my thought was on the tree, the reason for keeping it is if it is old, if it is stressed, I mean, we can redesign and add those spots when it dies, so we're gonna go cut it down today. It's got 5 years left in it, you know, let's see where it goes, and then add the spaces at that point. I'm not proposing we permanently keep a green space. I just thought that we could keep what was there for the time it had left. And I agree the tree does look stressed. I'm not an expert, but looking at it, it's certainly not a sapling.
Okay.
Have we had any input from any tree specialist about the tree other than to say it's stressed?
Not recently to my knowledge, but maybe Shannon may know more from past efforts. I don't know if we know anything.
I have this.
Oh,
We've had money in our budget for a decade trying to keep that thing alive, so I mean, I would say that it's on its last legs. We keep keeping it alive, and I would suggest that as part of this project, we keep that section as long as we can, so the tree's there as long as we can, but, I mean, obviously, this is one of the first sections of the project, so, But, yeah, the trees are very stressed because of stormwater issues, and I actually thought that was the reason to keep the area. It was more about stormwater, but perhaps I'm not remembering that correctly.
No, because they're going to deal with that with grading issues.
Okay, so.
Say that again, Ms. Myers, what did you say?
So the parking lot itself with the grading issues, are going to be dealt with. Melvin can probably talk about it a little bit better than I can, but this whole lot deals with grading issues to deal with the stormwater issues, because there are stormwater issues that happen further down Saunders Street with the pavement. But I will say, as far as the trees go, I recently had a meeting down at the Ambassador Garden with town staff and our arborist and stuff, and it's in really bad shape. I mean, that along with the 2 trees that are in the Ambassador Garden are both so highly stressed based on the urban environment. They're just too contained in where they are, and they don't have any more space. So honestly, it'd be a good public art project to take the oak tree and turn it into something else. But that's just my opinion.
Anyone else?
Has the arborist given any information about lifespan or prognosis of lifespan of the tree?
Without significant aeration and other things that you would need to do to keep that tree in this current environment, you're not going to be able to do that for too much longer. It would require a lot of money, as Diane pointed out. Just because you have to deal with all the acid, with acid rain and atmosphere issues and stuff like that. These trees just don't have, in this environment, with all the parking and the carbon and stuff, it just doesn't have a long-term lifespan. So, we could keep it alive, but it probably wouldn't be it would cost more money than it would, I guess, be worthwhile when you consider it against 27 parking spaces.
And I do need to clarify, so what it does help with stormwater is reducing the new impervious surface. So, that is part of the stormwater calculation, impervious versus pervious. And it is expected that there would be additional impacts to that tree with the grading that has to be done for the parking lot overall. So just, two things to think about.
So more negative impact to the tree with the proposed renovations to the parking space.
Okay. All right, we got a motion and a second
On reconsideration.
on the reconsideration.
No,
we
we
already voted.
actually
Yeah,
reconsidered
it's time to
the vote.
vote.
That one passed.
It's time to vote.
Yeah, okay, so I need to, right, so I need to be clear, I guess, on what my motion is now. That's what I'm at.
Okay, go
So,
for it.
yeah, so my motion would be to adopt the plan, option A, that has the additional spaces,
Yeah.
27 spaces.
There we
So,
go.
Mayor, just to be technical, you have already a motion before the council that you've gone back to, which is to preserve the green areas. So there's a vote that needs to be taken on that. If that fails, then a second motion could be made to go with the other plan.
Got it.
For the Saunders Street lot.
Okay. Ready?
So I need to make a motion to deny.
Yeah.
We just need to take a vote.
Just take a vote
Okay,
right now.
thank you.
There just needs to be a vote on the green plan,
Okay.
option B.
So in favor here is supporting the tree and the green space plan. And a no vote is opposing that. And then if the no votes have it, then we'd have to make another motion to approve something.
Yes.
So this motion is about voting for the green plan. Okay.
Yes, a yes vote here supports the green plan. Was it option B? Yeah. Just to be clear.
All right, here we go. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Sorry, I got 3 and 2, right? 1, 2, who was the third? Aye.
Well,
That's 3.
Okay,
So I was a no vote,
you're a no.
yes.
Let's do it again. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay? Opposed, no.
No.
All right. Motion fails 2 to 3. All right.
Okay, so now my motion is to adopt, for the Saunders lot, option A.
Second.
Okay. Motion second. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
3 ayes. Opposed, no.
No.
All right, motion passes 3-2.
Thank you, Councilmember Kittner. I appreciate it.
Good job, everyone.
So we're back to the streetscape. So if we have some individual items, smart trash cans, a signal upgrade, pavers instead of asphalt lanes, and lighting controls. So you can decide if you want to take these as a group or individually. We can just go down the list.
Any preference?
I'll make a motion for all 4 of those recommendations.
Second that.
I got a motion second for all 4 recommendations.
As presented by staff?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Should we at least describe generally what they are before we?
I heard smart trash cans for one.
Yep,
That's smart
yeah,
trash
so
cans.
it's including smart trash cans in the budget, which we talked about the lease option, which adds about $120,000 to the budget for a 5-year lease on those smart trash cans. The signal upgrade is about $200,000 for what we estimated to do decorative poles to replace the existing wood poles. The asphalt lanes, pavers instead of asphalt lanes cost a little bit more money. Let me go back to that slide. Asphalt lanes, if we did that, would take about $176,000 out of the budget, but the pavers provide a stormwater benefit as well as an appearance and sort of a traffic calming benefit. And then finally, the lighting, color, and control adds $60,000 to the budget, but it's a nice amenity to be able to use for events downtown.
Any other questions?
Could you speak to the lighting a little bit more, Mr. Dalton?
Colleen would love to talk about lighting, so I'll turn it over to her.
So this is for the catenary lighting that would be over North Salem Street. So essentially what this does is allow us, similar to what we've already adopted and approved with lighting control on the water towers, this would do that same thing. So we'd be able to change it for different festivals, whether that's, Go Pink for breast cancer awareness, or for Pride Month and being like rainbow colors, or just celebrating Christmas with red and green. It allows us to control those things the way we would, and we would have a setup schedule the way we do with electric utilities. And essentially, this is a software that we price this with the software that is already being done with, so they're the same system. So there already is that redundancy in the system. So. And they're all LED, but they're RGB LEDs, so they can do all different kinds of colors. So they can even chase each other if they wanted to.
All right.
So some fun stuff.
Light it up like a runway.
Yeah. But it's only for the North Salem Street that has lighting control. The other areas where you saw some catenary lighting behind, and those are just the warm white, standard warm white.
Great.
Thank you.
So,
All right.
I would say the lighting sounds fun. My one comment I was gonna have a discussion about is, if we're looking for a place, as the cost of every single one of these elements is going up, looking through this list here, the one thing I was like, well, maybe we could skip that and save some money, would be the signal upgrade. We have a functioning signal today. I'm not sure if it's worth $200K. And that's just me kind of going through the list and recognizing increased costs and looking for an option to maybe cut back a little bit somewhere. So that was my one thought on this list.
Okay, anybody else? All right, we got a motion and a second for both, all the options, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No?
All right, motion passes 4-1.
So the next item is the Saunders Street gathering space, and we recommend proceeding with that. Again, this is an image of what that would look like.
And again, the mural is
Conceptual.
conceptual, yes, to be designed in the future.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Mural is not included in the cost, as far as I know. So.
I'll make a motion to approve
Motion to approve.
as recommended by staff.
Okay,
I second it.
second. Stallings.
Is there a way to incorporate the library in there?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
All right.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Pass unanimously.
And the next item we have on the list is the smart parking. So we do recommend proceeding with that. So if you do choose to proceed with that, there are various options down there. We recommend, if you do want to proceed with smart parking, which we would recommend first of all, to include the Saunders lot and also the Seaboard Railroad Street side. And again, looking at those options, those are the cost ranges and what we'd recommended for that. So it's somewhere between $31,000 and $60,000. I know that's a big range, but there's a lot of different products out there. Technology is constantly changing. So, once we get into it, we'll have a lot better idea of exactly what elements we plan to include with this.
Questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to go the recommended version.
I'll second that.
Motion second. Further discussion?
And again, my thought here is just whether we want to go with Seaboard as well. Definitely Saunders lot, clearly. I wonder how effective it'll be on Seaboard with you know, fire trucks going through and everything. We're using cameras. So.
I think people would like to know if there's spots in that before they turn up there, personally. I mean, I kind of would. Although you can get all the way through, which is kind of nice, instead of getting caught in a parking lot and having to turn around. But I think
Would there be two indications, two billboards, like on,
end, right?
Yeah, on either entrance we need?
Yeah, that's part of that scoping process to figure out exactly what we would have out there in final design. I think that's it's probably a good idea, but we also have to think about the fact there's other parking not just along the railroad side, so we have to figure out how to sign that strategically where we're not confusing people, because with all the other parking, you know, if they see 0 spaces, for instance, there might be other spaces on the other side that might be open. So we'll try and strategically locate that where they know that it applies to that strip.
And would this need to be done concurrent with the Seaboard project? Or is it something where you come in at the end and a contractor goes in there and installs some high-tech system?
This is a camera system for those type of spaces, so you could install that after the fact. It doesn't have to go in initially with construction. Okay. With the Saunders lot, we would probably employ loops, which there may be some additional upfront coordination with construction as far as any kind of conduit that might be required, but typically the loops you would just cut in after the fact on the pavement.
All right.
Would you have a cost differential between the Saunders Street lot versus Seaboard?
Yeah, so with the options we priced, the range in price for the Saunders lot only is between $17,000 and $31,000 based on our consultants' research with the vendors. If you do both Saunders and Seaboard, you're in that range of $31,000 to $60,000. So that gives you an idea of those ranges. And the cost could go up, they could come down. It's technology, so it depends on how much we want to do and how we want to manage that program.
Anyone else? Okay. Do we have a motion on the floor?
Yeah, we do.
All right, motion second, discussion, we've done. Let's vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, passed unanimously. Move to the next item.
Okay, I think we are finished with the motions.
Yeah, we are.
So if there's no further discussion.
All right. We'll go with hand clap for this one.
Thank you, Mr. Dalton.
Thank you so much, everyone.
staff.
Great job.
On 7:30, new record.
Yes. And I want to recognize my colleagues. Good job on bringing this all together. So with that, there's no further business. Meeting's adjourned. All right.